Milwaukee will take the first time out of the night. They're down 2 with 6:24 left in the quarter.
A lot of one and dones tonight for Indiana. Not many second chance opportunities. Middleton, that's a three! And the Pacers' three-point shooting is cooled off finally. Portis elevates and hits. The first point since. Connaughton on the wing feeds Portis, who was fronted. Portis up between two, muscles his way in for the deuce. Milwaukee, their shooting percentage down to 47%. Portis, silky smooth, mid-range J.
Halftime in Milwaukee in Game 5. It's the Milwaukee Bucks 53, the Indiana Pacers 48.
Milwaukee with possession. They're 3 of their first 4 from the field. Portis elevates and hits.
Final in Game 5, the Milwaukee Bucks 115, the Indiana Pacers 92. Milwaukee now trailing 3 games to 2.
I think we just got to understand that, they're a team that's on the brink of their season being done, and they're playing desperate, they're playing hard, as they should be. And we, at the end of the day, they outcompeted us tonight. They played harder, played better. They kind of just dominated us in every facet of the game tonight. So we got to be better. Starts with me and that first group, but we just got to be better top to bottom.
Well, if you threw in the towel early last night on the Pacers, job well done. Frankly, pretty reminiscent of the team that you were watching last night. Absolutely awful as they try to clinch Game 5 and instead have their lowest point total of the season, 115-92. Ugly second, ugly third quarter. And the fourth quarter was made for Jarris Walker, James Johnson, etc. I'm Kevin Bone. Good Wednesday morning to you. Corbin Lingenfelter right there on the depressing opening montage. And Andy Sweeney alongside. Good day to have a lot of guests, right?
Well, it's not a bad day. I'm only smiling because it was a very depressing open there by Corbin.
I thought he painted the accurate picture.
I thought he did. It's our fault. We came in here after Game 1, and I said the exact same thing, and it makes me feel of that Colts Atlanta Falcons game, going back months, but it definitely was Game 1. It was the same thing. We started to believe in this team. We talked pretty damn cocky yesterday about this team that that Milwaukee is done and they're ready for Cancun and all this rhetoric that we threw out there. And boy, it looked like the Pacers were the team that was ready to go fishing, as the TNT guys would say. It looked like it was the Pacers that were done and ready to go to Cancun, and just a missed opportunity. And they'll have another one on Thursday, and I think they do come back, glass half full. They have bounced back in these situations. But boy, last night, what it did for me, KB, is even if they do get the win in this series, which again, I expect them still to get the win in this series, I have serious doubt if they're ready to lock in for the next series at all. I do. I mean, you see what is going on between the Knicks and Sixers, the games, the types of games that they have had. I mean, in any way, are the Pacers ready for that kind of conversation, for that type of series? Boy, the toughness wasn't there. The shot making wasn't there. And quite frankly, the superstars were not there last night. Tyrese Haliburton taken out of the game. We've seen that several times in this series. And now Pascal Siakam, after being so damn good in the first 2 games, KB, is not good right now. He's not shooting well, but he also can't make a free throw. So there's tons to unpack. Just a disappointing, lethargic, sad performance for 3 out of 4 quarters last night in Milwaukee.
It's never a good sign when Chris Teneri's thanking members of their TV production staff in the third quarter. Yeah. I was like, man, did I miss it? Are we already in the fourth quarter? Oh, no, wait. That's where the game has turned at this point here in Game 5. I thought Carlisle had some wild substitutions. I did not understand the treatment last night at times. I felt like it was like he viewed it as like the second night of a back-to-back in November. I thought missed opportunities to step on their throat. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about it, Andy. At one point last night, the Pacers were up 10.
I know.
They got off to a great start.
I know.
They were up 10.
The opposite. I thought they would have a slow start, then come on late. The opposite happened.
And Milwaukee goes to their bench, which we know how that unit has played this season. And I just thought you missed the opportunity to step on their throat. And I didn't think you had the same urgency with your substitution patterns. Like, I mean, honestly, when you watch Philly and New York last night in that first game, I mean, both these teams are just beating their starters into the ground with minutes. But I think there's an element of in the playoffs you can do that.
Yeah, the Knicks played 7 guys last night.
And I felt like at times last night you saw it definitely into that second quarter and then again a little bit in that third quarter where you were a little bit too regimented to these are the minutes we threw up on the whiteboard in the locker room before the game and we're going to stick to that. I'm like, Rick had thought had done such a nice job in game 2 and game 3 and game 4 of being a little bit more, again, urgent with his substitutions and not waiting for the normal, hey, you go back in the game at this point. Didn't like that at all. Patrick Beverley did what Lance Stevenson did quite often. He made sure that he got under your skin and made sure that the Pacers were the ones that looked like Bobby Portis the other night. And that's what Obi Toppin did in that moment. And that injected Beverley. I mean, that was a huge moment, huge sequence. The Bucks had just taken their first lead of the game, and then Beverley goes off. I think it goes for 7 straight right after that. So now you're playing with fire, Andy. And the good news is you are coming back home, but you're playing with fire. And I don't think Giannis or Lillard will play tomorrow night. Doc Rivers was probably the most optimistic we've heard from him after the game in talking about their availability and saying, I think they're very, very, very close. But still, the longer you go without putting them away, the more fire you're playing with, and the more that all of a sudden those stars get closer to returning. So I am beyond curious to see how they look tomorrow night because you've mentioned this quite often. They have responded very well all season long.
It's been the story of their season, quite frankly, has it not?
Tomorrow ain't normal response. Tomorrow, I think the Pacers have got the pressure on them.
Oh, I totally agree.
Tomorrow night. So how,
without a doubt,
this is the bullseye kind of on their back
without a doubt,
a little bit more. So it's a different level of response. Of you don't want to pack your bags and go back to Milwaukee for a game 7. So yeah, fascinated to see what's going to happen tomorrow night. The Knicks, I'm sure everybody saw it last night. They blow it late with a 6-point lead with 30 seconds to go. Tyrese Maxey, tremendous shot making from him.
28 seconds to go. They had a 5% chance of winning that game at that point, did the Philadelphia 76ers, when they're down 6 with under 30 seconds to go. It's unbelievable.
You could use that montage for the Madison Square Garden faithful, I think, on this Wednesday morning. So both series extend a little bit further. So if you're allowed to look ahead to what next series would look like, I believe no game 1 until Monday. But, of course, both of those teams have got a lot of their own business to take care of tomorrow night. 6:30 tomorrow night at Gamebridge. We've had kind of odd tip times all series long. 6:30, Knicks, Sixers. They fall into the 9 o'clock Eastern tip time.
Thank God they didn't give us that one tomorrow. A second straight time. I'm tired. Look at poor Corbin over there. Can barely keep his eyes open.
Well, he's out.
Look at him over there. He's
Mark
sleeping.
Dykman's
Look
back
at him.
Tomorrow.
That's a great point. Well, Corbin might be working overnights again. He might be working over, cutting sound for us in the morning. Coming up at 7:40, Pat Narduzzi is going to join us, Pitt football head coach. We'll talk with him. Stephen Holder in the 8 o'clock hour. Doug Boles, President IMS, will join us at about 8:30. Alex Golden, Setting the Pace podcast. We'll talk some Pacers with him at about 9 o'clock, and then we'll just fit in Pacer conversation as we go. I know after the game, and listen, what was it? About the 4-minute mark of the first quarter, Rick Carlisle went to the bench, and he went to the bench a little bit early, and we saw more early on of guys like Doug McDermott.
And the bench gave you some quality early. I don't want to act like it was awful.
See, that's where I was going to go.
I thought you didn't have the wherewithal or the urgency to just know when enough was enough and go back to more of your starting focus. And the same thing in the third quarter. I was probably, honestly, Andy, my most disappointing sequence of the game was how they started the third quarter.
Brother, me and you could hug right now. It's disgusting the way they started the third quarter.
You're down 5 at half.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Long halftime, regroup. It's mano-a-mano to start the third quarter. None of the weird, substitutions and rotations, et cetera, et cetera. And they just punked you to start the third quarter there. And that lead balloons and balloons and balloons, and it gets up to 14. And now at that point, you got to play pretty close to perfect basketball the rest of the way. And you started to chip away at that, and then all of a sudden I look up there kind of midway point of the third quarter, maybe a little bit past that, and I'm like, wait, is that Haliburton and all the bench guys? With like 5 minutes to go in the third?
Yeah, and the Bucks immediately. So let me just go through this because I wrote this down. The first possession of the second half, when you're exactly right. It's like, the Pacers have been a good third-quarter team. In fact, they've been a great third-quarter team this season. It's been one of their strengths is they go to the locker room and they come out and they make the adjustments, and the adjustments are good from Carlisle and his staff, and they steady things. They take a lead, they retake a lead, they do whatever. The first possession of the second half, KB, they go out, they turn the ball over. The Bucks come down, they get a layup. I mean, that's how it started. Again, you're down 5. It's not the end of the world. You're not playing good basketball, but in the end, you don't have to fall apart there. The Bucks go on a 7-0 run, timeout Rick Carlisle, and how many times do we see the timeout of disgust from Rick Carlisle? And then, there's a play also in the third quarter where there were 2, where Bobby Portis misses a free throw. And he out-hustles Siakam and, another Pacer who's standing right there. And
I
he goes,
thought you didn't
the
get
ball,
to the
lays it in.
50-50 balls
No,
enough.
well,
that had been a staple this series. I didn't think you did that
It's
enough.
in one of our sounds we'll play in the check down. But Carlisle, they're 7 out of 24 early in that first half. It was some large number that they were not getting to lose balls. And then there was another play. And, I'm not bashing your guy, but I guess I am bashing. No offense. I can say that. Now I can say anything about Pat Connaughton. But Pat Connaughton's going up in his 8-inch vertical, and he's going up and getting a rebound over 4 Pacers. Oh my gosh, you can't let
8-inch
Pat
vertical.
Connaughton.
I believe he set an NBA Combine record in the
forgot.
vertical jump.
He did. Well,
that's a stereotypical white man comment there for Pat Connaughton.
He's an old guy now.
He's one of the best athletes, frankly, we've seen in a while.
It's just, and then the desperation in the third quarter, and that's what it was. Haliburton, McConnell, Toppin, Isaiah Jackson, and Ben Shepherd. The Bucks immediately go on a 6-0 run. You get a timeout. He keeps that same group in. But let me say this. Even though I know the substitution stuff will be there with Carlisle, his answer to that has always been, guys, we need 6-7 guys to score in double figures. Wearing teams down, of course, they didn't get out and run for the most part yesterday, but wearing teams down and getting production from our bench is one of our great strengths that we have as a team. So he will take heat on that. I will just say that I was disappointed. More so, I know Carlisle will take heat. I'm tired of the excuses with this team a little bit. KB, well, they're young, they're gonna learn. It's like at this point, even in wins in games 3 and 4 in Gamebridge, that the Bucks brought it. It's not like this is what bothered me, why they didn't show up. Games 3 and game 4, those were not 25-point games. Do we not remember game 3 where, near the end of regulation,
game 4
overtime, the Bucks won the
it.
game. It did, but you know what you understand what I'm saying. Parts of game 4 and all of game 3, these were not blowout. That was not a blowout. And so for them to react the way they did and not be ready, and to me, last night was a hell of a lot more on the players than it was anything that Rick Carlisle did or did not do. You got whooped last night, and you got whooped by guys like Pat Beverly and Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton and Malik Beasley. That's what you got whooped by last night. And to me, it was frustrating. And now you say you're playing with fire. I know after the game, Doc Rivers, he was a lot more positive than he was before the game. Before the game, he came out. Alex Golden, who we're going to have on at 9 o'clock, retweeted it, where Doc Rivers they're not doing much. Talking about Dame and Giannis. Then after the game, it made it sound like, well, maybe they're doing more than what he led on in the first place. But I'm just frustrated they got whooped, and I'm frustrated that TJ McConnell can get into the lane, but Tyrese Haliburton can't. This team needs Tyrese Haliburton, KB, to be this. At some point, he's not a guy that's going to go out and get 35 a game. It's not his game. I understand they're relying on 7, 8 guys, and they're relying on 6 of those guys to score in double figures, and that's the formula. I get it. But at some point, the formula goes out the window. It feels like they go 15 possessions without Tyrese Haliburton being in a spot to shoot the basketball. If I'm going to go down, I would rather have Tyrese Haliburton shooting the basketball than TJ McConnell shooting the basketball 13 times, or yet another 3 by Obi Toppin, or another, and I know he had a good number output last night, another missed free throw. Now under 50% from the line is Pascal Siakam in this series. I don't know. That it probably shouldn't frustrate me. You may feel totally different on that, but at some point I'm like, I need, they played 5 games. In 2 of them, Tyrese Haliburton has been a no-show, and I need him to not be a no-show if you're going to close these games out. I mean, Jalen Brunson hasn't been a no-show. Tyrese Maxey last night wasn't a no-show. Joel Embiid's injured. He scored 50. Donovan Mitchell hasn't been a no-show, even though no one's seen that series. I need Haliburton to look for a shot a little bit more, and I know everybody else wants to score on the team. That just, I don't listen off frustrations, but I'm watching last night. I'm counting. It's like 13, 14 possessions. Well, the guy doesn't even get the ball where he can even shoot it.
ESPN had this last night. Bucks become the first team to win a playoff game without its top 2 scores. That is literally in the history of the NBA.
It's unbelievable.
And again, Lillard and Giannis both still were doubtful heading into last night, so exactly what that's going to look like tomorrow night, that'd be quite the turnaround for them. Yeah, apologies here, Matt. He goes, I knew the Pacers were screwed last night the minute you said you had 0 nerves about the game.
Yep,
They
he's
were
right.
doomed. How many times do you think over the course of the regular season I said, yeah, I'm not worried about the Pacers tonight, and then they won, and I never got those tweets?
Well, it doesn't matter. It all gets erased. It's a different game when you get to the
wrong.
postseason.
I thought, and frankly,
sure. So was I.
After you get up 10, I'm thinking, the Bucks are dead. And I just thought you helped revive them. I know player blame. I hear you out. I thought Carlisle gave him life as well. I did not like that as well. And I thought Doc Rivers, going to that full switch. I mean, if you look at it, they just now are switching pretty much everything on that defensive end of the floor. And that's going to be a big adjustment for the Pacers as they try to close it out now at home, 6:30 again tomorrow night. So a lot of guests. I'd love to sit here and be like, Racers and Pacers here in the month of May. That will be put on hold at least for a little bit. But the month of May is here. So Doug Boles going to join us, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He's going to join us coming up at 8:30. Stephen Holder in his usual Wednesday slot at 8. As Andy said, Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Matt Gonzalez, the 3rd-round pick out of Pittsburgh, going to join us here coming up in just about 20 minutes, and we'll chat with Alex Golden, Pacers-wise. Busy show today from a guest standpoint coming up at 9.
Yeah, I'm real interested in Pat Narduzzi. I am. That could be a sneaky fun interview to talk about Gonzalez and what's going on with his team there. So again, Gonzalez could have went back easily to college for one more year. All right, so that's the debacle. We'll talk a lot about the Pacers debacle last night. Again, it's going to be Game 6 coming your way tomorrow night, 6:30. Our coverage here on The Fan beginning at 6 o'clock. What did Rick Carlisle and Tyrese Haliburton say after the game last night? We'll let you hear that next. Your morning check down coming up next on the Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with
coach of the third-round pick of the Indianapolis Colts. That would be Pat Narduzzi, head coach of Matt Gonzalez, going to join us here in 15 minutes. And that'll be nice to have 10 minutes of cover-up over the stinker last night in Milwaukee. Andy Sweeney, take it away.
Yeah, I'll take it away. We need to ask Narduzzi what he thinks of Notre Dame football, just so you can't sit over there and be comfortable for 10 minutes. Yeah.
I probably don't want to bring up last year's game.
No, probably don't want to. Debacle last night, 115-92. That's your final. You know, the Pacers led by 8 there at the end of the first quarter, led by as many as 10. Things fell apart in the last 3 quarters, disgusting, especially the second and the third quarters. Post-game, Rick Carlisle on the competition within his team, and he says, hey, put it all on me. We didn't play well. It's on the coaching staff.
After a good first quarter, things went very much downhill after that. Give the Bucks credit. They played hard. They played with a high compete level. We did some good things early. I don't think we were playing with the kind of intensity we needed to, even when we had the lead. And so we paid a price. I haven't watched the film yet, so I don't have a total view of it, but we just didn't play with a consistent compete level we needed to. And so, you know, I'll take responsibility for that. I didn't have these guys ready the way they needed to be ready to play this game.
Yeah, and I know that's things. Those are things that coaches say. It's a thing that Rick Carlisle would say. I just disagree with the end. And maybe he wasn't at his best. We saw that with some of the substitutions, but the players, for the most part, did not show up. Tyrese Haliburton last night, he did play 34 minutes. So, you know, I don't know if they really got to cut his minutes too much. I know those back spasms. He had 16 points in the loss last night. And for Haliburton, now there's a big opportunity coming back home to Cambridge on Thursday.
Just attack. You know, I felt like myself, I could be better getting downhill. Us as a group got a little stagnant, holding the ball and playing a little slower. And, you know, when teams switch, it can kind of lull you into that. So, you know, we got to be better there. I'll be better there. You know, but a hell of an opportunity next game in game 6 back at home. So, got to be prepared for that.
Yeah, 6:30. That will be the tip time coming up tomorrow night. If there is a Game 7, that would be Saturday up in Milwaukee. Any potential Game 1 for the Eastern Conference semifinals, not till Monday. Again, last night, the Bucks, this is courtesy of ESPN, the first team in NBA history to win a playoff game without its top 2 scorers from the regular season. Doc Rivers, pregame, seemed very doubtful on pending returns for Giannis and Damian Lillard. Post-game, he had this quote, "I don't know how to answer that. I know I hope. I think they're very, very, very close."
Well, what do we believe here?
It's the first ounce of optimism Rivers has had the entire series.
I know. Before the game, he said basically they weren't doing anything.
I'm like, is this just like post-win jubilation here for a few
It
seconds?
could be. I still don't think we see Giannis in this series. I
almost think better chance Giannis than Lillard.
You think so?
I mean, if Lillard really
right.
injured his Achilles a couple days ago, I mean, Giannis has been rehabbing for what, 3.5 weeks now?
Yeah. It was a 3 to 5 week injury, and it's been more than 3 weeks.
Cavs won, right, and the Knicks blew it, and that's what happened last night in the NBA. All right, shifting gears here. I guess we go a little baseball action. Paul Skeens last night over at Victory Field looked like a great crowd. Obviously, a beautiful night for that. I saw a few highlights. It's never good for the opposing team when the pitcher throws 100 and he's in the sun and you're in the shadows. And that's how it was for Buffalo for the first couple innings last night. Skeens, 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, 4 hits, 1 walk. On the season, he's thrown 23 innings. He's allowed 1 earned run, and he has 41 strikeouts to 6 walks. Yeah, is that a good ratio?
Well, this is just a silly thing that baseball always does. Like Paul Skeens, and it's great for the Indians, you know. Paul Skeens should not be in AAA baseball. I mean, he just shouldn't be in AAA. He is ready to go to the bigs, I would say, and pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Is he not?
Do you think we'll look back on this? And I don't know, this is probably for like a bigger July topic, but do you think we'll look back on thinking to ourselves at one point, like Caitlin Clark, Paul Skeens, Tyrese Haliburton, and Anthony Richardson were all. And again, I don't, you know, it's probably unfair to put Richardson and Haliburton maybe even in the Clark or Skeens category just yet, based off kind of where their hype is. But still, I mean, Haliburton's on Team USA, and, you know, Richardson, I guess, could get to that level. But it's quite the time to be in this market. And, like, Go watch Paul Skeens for $15, and he could turn out to be one of the best pitchers in baseball.
You know, last year when I was in Louisville, your boy Ellie was there.
Sure.
And it was like it was one of those things where you knew they were eventually going to bring him up. It was a lot like this, that every time you knew he was going to play. Now, he was an everyday player, right? He wasn't a pitcher, so it's more than once every week and a half you're going to see him. But it was one of those things. It was like, you better get out there and go see him while you can for $10 and get your $1 beers.
Right.
You better
exactly.
go. You better go do it while you can, because otherwise you're going to have to drive an hour and a half to Cincinnati and play, and pay bigger prices.
Pretty much every local MLB team lost last night,
Except for the St. Louis Cardinals, baby.
They split, right? The doubleheader.
Yeah, they split the doubleheader. Yeah, but the Reds lost, and Mark's Cubbies lost as well. Come on, Cubs. Come on, Cubs.
Anything else on your end?
No,
just
that's
two
it.
games, right, tonight in the association.
Just the two games tonight.
We will have the opportunity to see is it Boston Miami? Is that the first game?
Yeah, it is 7:30 on TNT, and then Clippers Mavericks, probably the best game that the best series that you're watching. The Cavs Magic. The Cavs took the 3-2 lead.
Sixers has been a great series.
Well, last night made it a great series.
Yeah, I think there's been good drama, though. Some of the late game stuff.
Oh, yeah. And now the question would be, do Knicks fans do what they did the other night in Philly? Like, if you're a Philly fan, are you going to allow
Would you
the
rather
New
be
York
a Knicks
sports
fan or a Pacer fan this morning? Your heart gets ripped out if you're a Knicks fan. A Pacers fan, you could have gone to bed midway through the second quarter.
Which I seriously wanted to do. Just know that. If I didn't have to talk about the game,
Maddie
I was
literally
going to
looked
bed.
at me with like 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. She goes, "Why are you still up?"
Oh, yeah, you made it. God bless you.
I'm like, I don't know. You never know. Something great. Bobby Portis could run out on the floor, and
Well, it went from 23 to like 17 or 16.
Oh,
didn't
I wasn't
it?
even thinking of that.
I was thinking at one point.
I was thinking more of Beverly throwing a punch or something.
Beverly doing the too small on Haliburton. I don't want to see that again. I really don't.
I was glad they didn't tee up the too small. I'm like, can we finally get back to guys being allowed to celebrate somewhat?
It's okay. If you want to say you can't stand over a guy, okay, even though I think that's silly most of the time, whatever. I would still rather wake up a Knicks fan. I think the Knicks fan, given that they're a 2 seed, the Knicks fan has more confidence and cockiness.
Going on the
still.
road.
I'm with you.
They've got Embiid.
They still have the cockiness behind their team. I think Pacer fans, maybe I'm wrong here, are leaning to the finish line a little bit. How does that, maybe a racing saying as we're in the month of May, KB. They're leaning to the finish line. They just want to get this series over with so something nutty doesn't happen and Giannis and or Dame is back on the floor, which I don't think they're going to be.
Pat Narduzzi on the other side?
Yeah, let's get to Pat Narduzzi. Let's do that. We'll take a break. Pitt football. Why the hell are we talking to Pat Narduzzi? Well, one of his offensive linemen, Matt Gonzalez, ended up here in Indy. We'll talk to him about that. What does Narduzzi think of the pick? And then we'll dive back into the Pacers as well. A lot to talk about on this Wednesday morning. It's the Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Hey, it's JMV. Later on this afternoon at 3, all you need to know about game number 5, the Pacers closeout opportunity, and Matt Miller of ESPN. Don't go anyplace else.
The calendar says 5/1. The month of May is here. In an hour, we'll chat with the one and only Doug Boles, the president of the Motor Speedway. Ticket sales seem to be doing outstanding here. Coming up for the Indianapolis 500, so we will chat with him at 8:30. Again, Pat Narduzzi, the head coach of Matt Gonzalez, who was the third-round pick, a trade up by the Colts. Matt actually is going to join us coming up on Friday. Pat Narduzzi going to join us here in a few minutes.
Yeah, Corbin, you'll like this. All I've heard about the month of May is supposedly how much Kevin Bowen drinks on Carb Day. That has been the main conversation.
I think it's being a tad overblown.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm not expecting you to be Wade Boggs. For people that don't know, Wade Boggs would drink like 100 light beers on a flight across the country. So I'm expecting
Wade Boggs cards growing up.
I'm expecting Kevin Boggs Bowen, I guess, on Carb Day on that Friday.
Are you missing Derby week this week? 150th running, right?
You know what's funny of it? I will miss it on Friday, and I will miss it on Saturday, I should say, not being there. I tried to weasel my way back in. Maybe other years when I don't have a 7.5-month-old, I will try to weasel my way in. But they've raised the prices even more. Dude, the prices are absolutely ridiculous. It's through the roof. And, the best part, the reason I'm not missing it this week is, this, logistically getting around's not easy. But you know what time horses work out, right? They work out at like 6:45 in the morning. I don't know why they do that. So, that would be like if IndyCar said, yeah, we'll be out practicing. We're going to run some time trials at 5:45 a.m. Everyone get out there. You'd say, what the hell are we doing here?
CrossFit based off what he told us on Monday.
That's where he's lifting a log or whatever he's doing. But no, all the horse racing stuff is done at like literally, KB, by 8 o'clock. The horses will be back bathing and sleeping in their barn. So you got to get there early and then go take a nap.
150th running coming up here on Saturday down there in Louisville.
Dude, prices are through the roof. Just through the absolute roof.
What are we talking?
Well, they raised so on Saturday, they started doing this thing around COVID. On Saturday, on the Derby, your ticket is all inclusive, even if you don't have one of the, the millionaire's row. Your ticket is all inclusive. So you go up there, you get your drink. It's easy. It's quick. You're not having to worry about money. The food is there. They throw out hot dogs and burgers and everything else. But on Friday and other days, but especially on Friday for the Oaks, it's not. And they raised like the lily, if you will, or the mint julep went from $17 to $22. You go there, you and your wife, you buy a couple drinks, you hand the lady a $50 bill.
$22 for a mint julep?
$22 for a mint julep. But
that sounds awful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a
lot of money.
Why not
just go to the infield and drink your Keystone Light?
They've raised the infield. You don't get to take stuff in.
Oh,
anymore.
Really?
No, this ain't like the Indy 500, baby.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, you ain't taking no cooler in. But that went from $40 then to $60, and this year the infield for Derby is $130.
Whoa. $130 for a single infield ticket?
Just to get in the infield.
And you're not seeing horses in the infield.
You're not really seeing the horses, and you're just going there to basically have a spot to drink as much as you can possibly drink of their beer.
That is awful.
Oh, no, if you and your wife wanted to go to the Derby, you're going to spend over $5,000. Easy. And again, you could go to Mexico for a week away from the kids for that. So the last couple years, they've really priced the average guy out as if it wasn't for the average guy anyway, but they've really priced the guy right out of it. They really have. It's $5,000-$6,000 if you wanted to take your wife.
Sierra Leone, I believe, and Fierceness, am I seeing that correctly, as the two favorites here coming up for the 150th running of the Derby. All right, let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline right now. He is the longtime head coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers, and he saw one of his own get drafted, I would say kind of early in round 3, at least a trade up from the Colts, not something they typically do. Matt Gonzalez with that third-round pick. And again, Pat Narduzzi joins us now. Coach, good morning to you.
Good morning, guys. How are we doing today?
We are doing wonderful. We appreciate the time early on this Wednesday morning. How would you describe Matt Gonzalez that the Colts are getting here at pick number 79?
Oh, wow. The first thing I'd say is they got a great person. Because we know he's a great player on tape and all that, and you can watch him. But the first thing, I think you're getting a quality person that's going to go in there and work his tail off. And, there's some really good players out there that don't work hard, that aren't tough, that aren't physical. He's all of the above. he's a, he had another year. He could have come back another year. I think he's going to be a first rounder. That's kind of what I think he is. He's the best offensive tackle we've had since Brian O'Neill, who's up with the Vikings. I think was a second rounder as well, and has had a great career up there. But he's athletic, he's tough, and he's gonna work at it every single day to be the greatest player he can be in the NFL.
Pitt head coach Pat Narduzzi with us here on the Wake Up Call on this Wednesday on the Payless Liquors hotline. Maybe not last year because of the injury, maybe go back another year, but is there a play or a game that the average fan, the average Colts fan coach could pop on and see Matt kind of maul the other defensive line? Is there anything that stands out to you where you remember, like, damn, Matt's balling out right now?
You know what? There's no, I hope there's not a game that you can say, oh, go watch it back and check it out. That means he's inconsistent. I think, the one thing Matt is consistent. You can put on any game in the 21 season and watch him ball out. I mean, throw on the ACC championship when we tore apart Wake Forest, I guess, in the 21. Put on the Clemson game at home when we beat Clemson. I mean, put on whatever game you want to watch. I mean, Matt shows up every game, and like I said, he's tough, he's physical, and he's smart. I mean, he's got everything to be a great player in the National Football League.
Pat Narduzzi with us here again, the head coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers and the head coach of Matt Gonzalez, who the Colts took and traded up for in round 3. Coach, I don't know if you communicated at all with Chad Henry, the Colts area scout, but he lives in the Pittsburgh area, and he mentioned that the nickname that he used for Matt was the ideal blueprint, called him the blueprint, basically everything the Colts look for in an offensive lineman. What were your conversations with the Colts like, and is that some of the feedback that you heard from them?
You know what, Chad, I'll have to make sure, matter of fact, I'll let you make sure Chad comes up and says hello to me. When those guys come through during the season, I'm blocking our team. Our player personnel director, deals with them. Our strength coach will really talk to them a lot. I don't sit out there and have discussions with them on the field because that's our time with our players and time for me to coach. But, you guys would be amazed at the people that don't call around, okay? And obviously Chad's done a tremendous job. I did not realize he lives right here in the area. He's going to be one of my favorite scouts now. Guys do their homework. And when you do your homework, you don't have to call around and ask. Like, anybody's going to call me about my players. What am I going to say bad? Okay. When I walk into high school and you talk to a high school coach and say, hey, tell me about this guy. Like, you hear all great things. You got to dig. Okay. You got to dig. And that's obviously what Chad did was he did his homework. He lives in the area. He's hearing, if he's out in the bars on a Friday night, he's hearing everything about the guy. The guy is a stand-up individual. He's a tough dude. He's what you want, in a draft choice of that kind. And, I think, Chad's the guy you need to get on the radio. Put him on the radio and let him talk some more because he's probably watching him. I just know, from in this building what Matt does, and I know we've never, ever, ever, ever had an off-the-field issue with him. His family is tremendous support to him out in Long Island. So, there's not going to be any issues on a Thursday night where he's got family issues. I mean, he's got the support system he needs. I just couldn't say better things about him. I'm glad Chad did his homework, and I appreciate people that do what they're supposed to on that end.
13 starts at right tackle for Matt, 11 at left tackle. The Colts are very much up in the air on where exactly he's going to slot in on their offensive line. How do you think he projects position-wise to the next level?
I think he could play tackle. I think he could play guard. I think he could do anything he wants to do. Matter of fact, I think he's played in at center. So to me, with that draft choice, you got a guy that can do anything. He's athletic enough. He's tall enough. He's long enough to play left tackle. We trusted him, on the quarterback's left side or the right side. So, we've got I think that's a great thing about him. He's versatile and can do anything. Ideally, you'd like to say he's going to be a left tackle in the National Football League, but I think left or right is where he's going to probably slot in. And but it all depends on their needs and who they have in front of them. And I think another great guy that's coached against him every day is the Colts' new defensive line coach, Charlie Partridge.
Sure.
Who came from Pitt. It'd be a great one to get on there and give you a little bit more feedback just as far as everyday one-on-ones with him. And I'm sure he had a lot to do with just the character of Matt and who he was as he went through that draft process in the draft room.
We're talking Matt Gonzalez, obviously offensive lineman taken there in the third round by the Colts. We're talking with Pat Narduzzi, Pitt head football coach, who had him there a couple years in Pittsburgh. I'm looking at one of the breakdowns of his game, coach, and it says he has a nasty disposition, especially in the run game. To you, coaching the offensive line, when I say nasty disposition, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's a great term. I mean, you want an offensive line that's nasty, and Matt's one of those guys in the huddle. And we've got a new one. I won't tell you who his name is. That's nasty in the huddle, nasty on the field. That's gonna, to me, nasty is you're not taking any crap. You're out there, throwing people around, and and you're playing through the whistle, okay, through the echo of the whistle. And Matt's that type of guy. I mean, you just see the intensity in the huddle. We used to huddle a year ago. And the intensity in the huddle, if he doesn't make his block, he's smacking himself in the head, and he's one of those intense dudes that, like I said, that's part of the toughness of Matt. You would think he grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as tough as he is.
Coach, we'll end with this, and thank you for the time here on this Wednesday morning. I don't know if you caught the draft call between Chris Ballard and Matt. But Chris Ballard called it one of the best draft calls he's ever had in telling Matt that they were going to pick him. Corbin, our producer here, played the call yesterday. I think we had to bleep it out, I believe, 17 times, if I have that count right, on some of the words that Matt Gonzalez used on that call. I would assume you're not too shocked by that fiery individual the Colts are getting?
He's fiery. I told you, you get him in the huddle, and if, things aren't going right, he's going to help lead that offense. He's going to help lead that offensive line. And can you guys, after we get done with the show, send EJ and Sports Info? I'd love to hear that call. I don't jump on social media a ton and go listen to all that stuff, but I'd like to hear the unbleeped version if I could.
Well, we would have to dip into maybe your salary to pay for some of the fines on that, so we will definitely send it over, though, to you. Matt Gonzalez and the head coach of the Pittsburgh Panthers. He is Pat Narduzzi right there on the Payless Liquors hotline. Coach, can't thank you enough. Appreciate the time and good luck this season.
Hey, you're welcome, guys. Thanks for having me on, and hail to Pitt. And hail to Matt Gonzalez.
There we go.
Hail to Matt Gonzalez
like
there.
that.
Pat Narduzzi on the Payless Liquors hotline. Corbin, fire that off to the old Pittsburgh staff, the Zoom call that we played yesterday for Matt Gonzalez, who, again, will join us coming up 8:30 on Friday.
The reason I like Matt's call is he's kind of almost low-key whispering into the phone, is he not? He's like, let's go. Like he's like gritting his teeth
in a
good way. And Corbin can find it.
Dig that up,
Go on the
Corbin.
O drive. There's only sound from 2018 in there. You'll be able to find it. Just fire that up for us. But I love that. One thing we didn't ask, but it is funny. I was looking at their schedule. This is the year that the ACC goes from coast to coast. Like they have games against Cal and SMU. I just love that.
Did you dig it up, Corbin?
I did.
Okay, we played this yesterday. Again, this is Matt Gonzalez. Chris Ballard called this one of the best draft calls he's ever had.
Matt.
Yeah, what's up?
Welcome to Indy, man. This is Chris Ballard, GM. We're picking you right here, man.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Absolutely. We are excited to get you, man. We moved up to make sure we didn't lose you in the next few picks, man. You're going to do great here.
Let's go. I'm a Colt, baby. I'm a
There's no doubt you're going to fit in, big guy.
Thank you. Let's go. You guys won't regret it. You won't regret it.
Attaboy. You're my type of guy.
He is he not? That's the most obvious thing that could be said. You're my type of guy. Really, Chris?
I love Pat Narduzzi saying, seems like he's from Pittsburgh. You kind of get a little bit of that blue-collar nature there. And I would assume the Pacers could have used some Matt Gonzalez intensity last night. So you are – I don't want to put words in your mouth.
All right.
I can put some blame at Rick Carlisle with his substitutions, and I can put some blame at the players. It sounded like you are more much blame of players, not Rick Carlisle.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I thought
which is probably better for our future Tuesday mornings.
I'm not saying not to blame Carlisle. Listen, when you have the game like last night, everyone is to blame. I want to be clear on that. And Rick Carlisle, some of the substitutions, and, at no point after the first quarter did his team look ready to play or focused in on ready to play. I guess my thing, so I think there's degrees. If you say, well, it's 50, 60, 40, whatever percentage you want to put on Carlisle, I'm probably just a little bit lower in that, players make shots. I mean, the coaches can only do so much, and I understand the substitution patterns at times were sketchy. We talked about it game 1. We talked about it now in game 5, but players didn't show up. I don't know any other way to say it. Players didn't make shots. Players missed free throws. Players got beat on defense. And if they have the attitude, this is not college basketball. This is pro basketball. If the attitude and the urgency and the emotion and the fire and all those things, if it's not there, the coaches can only take that so far. That's how I view it. At some point, the players have to pick up that torch, and they got to go out there, and they got to make the plays. And all of the confidence, I don't want to say cockiness because that's seen as a negative word, but all of the confidence that we saw, I didn't ask this to Carlisle yesterday, but I thought about it if we had time, is, from game 1, the debacle there, to last night, the confidence level that the Pacers were playing with. They could even, they took a punch in, game 3, and they kept on ticking, and they outlasted the Bucks, and they won that game, and I just felt like they didn't take any adversity well last night, did the Pacers, and for that thing to balloon to, 17 points and 20 points, and to have Lopez and Connaughton and Bobby Portis out-hustle you, and to have Pat Beverly look at your best player and says he can't guard me, and to have a career night, I don't know. You just, to me, I put probably 70% on the players, that this is pro sports. You got to go out there. You got to make shots. You got to be dialed in. You got to run the offense. You got to react. You got to be able to take a punch. And they just didn't do any of those things. But I will say, the most positive thing you could say about this Pacer team all season has been their ability to take quite frankly an ass whooping that they took last night, that they maybe took in game 1, and bounce back and win. Not just play better, but win that next game. We saw it earlier in this series, and I'm expecting that. I will be extremely worried if I do not see them, and obviously you can say, well, duh, they'd be going to game 7. If I don't see them, KB, play a much higher level, a much higher confidence level, dialed-in level of basketball on Thursday. If they go out there and they look a little bit like last night or game 1 and they lose, they are playing with fire of losing in 7 games, going back to Milwaukee and losing to a team without Lillard and Giannis, and it would just be beyond embarrassing if that's what happened.
Yeah, I want to believe it, and I think I believe it, but it's different pressure tomorrow night. That ain't responding from game 1.
Oh, that's not Wizards on a Tuesday. We lost that game, and we're going to beat the Nets on a Thursday.
This isn't whatever. The Spurs and the Boles losses, or go back earlier in the season. Tomorrow night, you've got a bit of the piano on your back. And I don't want to read too much into last night because, again, I'm a big believer in kind of the others perform different at home versus on the road. But does that give Patrick Beverly any confidence? Does that give, and maybe Beverly doesn't need it, frankly, does that give Malik Beasley any confidence? For those that went to bed, Malik Beasley went off in the second half. And he is capable of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, hit back-to-back threes.
Pat Connaughton was great last night. Does that carry into Gainbridge Field? I tend to think it won't, but that is a concern. And also, you got to acknowledge it. Portis got his ass ejected in game 4. He's a pretty good player when he doesn't get ejected.
He had 29 and 10 last night. And by the way, that's what he was going to have in game 4.
He had a great start.
He was going to have 29 and 10.
Now, again, away from home, I just tend to think some of that stuff just kind of disintegrates and isn't as alive as it was. But still, that is something that I thought about for last night.
Yeah. How much of a worry is Siakam's free throw shooting?
Yeah, it's
12 of 26.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit more worried about I think you need more consistent scoring from him.
Yeah.
And I'm not expecting game 1, game 2, but
I know.
He just hasn't. I think that's a matchup. He should be, 18 to 20 without question. And hell, maybe if he made his free throws, he would be that. But I would put that a little bit lower on the list compared to where you're at from last night. I don't think 3 Siakam free throws makes a difference from last night.
Yeah, we'll continue the Pacers conversation in a few minutes, but coming up next, Stephen Holder from ESPN.com joins us. What did he make of the Colts draft? We'll get his breakdown. We'll do it next. It's a Wednesday, hanging out with you until 10 o'clock, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
This is May. The Fan.
Mercifully, we'll take a break from the Pacers here. Stephen Holder, ESPN.com, going to join us. We've got a lot to recap. Draft-wise, again, the Colts currently in phase 2 of their offseason programs. You'll start to see some pictures and videos from them out on the practice field. Still a couple of weeks away from the 11-on-11 OTA portion of the offseason, but to talk more about that, Stephen joins us right now. And I guess, Stephen, a little Caitlin Clark coverage from you as well. Would this be a somewhat consistent thing, or was that just opening day of training camp? ESPN wanted you there for that. Today's our media day, for what it's worth, for the Fever.
Yeah, we actually, I believe our friend Michelle Steele is in town to do a bunch of feature pieces for the season coming up today at media day. So they're going to throw quite a few people at Caitlin Clark this year at ESPN. So, excuse me, I don't believe that'll be the last time I'll be called upon. So, as needed, we'll see. I don't think it'll be the last time, though.
Well, maybe that's why we can't get her on air.
Yeah, we're a little upset around here that we can't get a 10-minute interview with Caitlin Clark,
Stephen Holder about it.
So
right?
we haven't had one of those either that I know of, but maybe that's happening today. I don't know, but keep working on it. I think it'll happen at some point.
Yeah,
she's got a few requests, I hear.
It sounds like it, and I think her team is honoring those. Stephen Holder from ESPN with us here on the Payless Lakers hotline. Stephen, I was getting ready to start like an annual thing I do post-draft of like projecting rookie playing time. And I get it's way early for all of that and things can change. But I start to look at this class and I'm like, I don't see a 16-game starter. Latu I think will play and certainly play a good amount, but I don't view him as necessarily like a 3-down, one without question day one start, which is fine. He doesn't need to be that. AD Mitchell and Alec Pierce, do they split snaps? Does Mitchell kind of eat into that a little bit as the year moves along? The third and fourth round guys are 2 offensive linemen. In a perfect world, they don't play a ton. So I don't know. I guess I just kind of look at this rookie class and think a lot of it, and this is part of what happens when you bring back 22 starters, a lot of it will kind of be on, very situational roles for them, even the high picks.
No, 100%. I think you're right. And it is a product of the team that they have. It doesn't mean their team is like a Super Bowl contender, but we knew going into this they had a pretty packed roster, as you just mentioned. I mean, they spent well over $100 million to bring all these guys back, right? And the consequence of that's the wrong word, but I guess the reality after doing that is there aren't a lot of spots. But I actually think maybe this is me spinning this in an overly positive manner, but hear me out. I think it's actually a good reflection of the team, because if you have a team where rookies can slide in and get a bunch of playing time, the odds are your team has a lot of holes, and we can still quibble about whether they should or shouldn't have done something more in the secondary. I get all that. That's fine, and that's a conversation to be had. But just put that aside for a second, and if you looked at this roster going in, there were not a lot, at least, obvious places where rookies would step in and be called upon immediately. So you're absolutely right. If those offensive linemen play this year, it's because people got hurt. They brought back their entire offensive line. I mean, how many teams – I don't know this answer, but I would actually like to do the research. I wonder how many teams in the NFL brought back their entire offensive line this year. Or any year. It never happens, right?
And I think, Steven, to take a step further, O-line, they brought back every player that played a snap, period. Like all their key backups as well. Right.
So to a degree, these offensive line picks are almost luxury picks. And I know when you talk like this, it sounds like you're talking about a team that just won the Super Bowl. No, they clearly did not. They didn't even make the playoffs. But what I think it is a team with some depth. Whether that means they have elite or enough elite players, that's a different question. But they definitely have a team with depth and quality starters. So I think it's a good reflection of the roster.
Stephen Holder with us here. He's from ESPN, ESPN.com. We're talking some Colts, finalizing the draft. We'll get to Kwity Paye and some other things here. Yesterday, Chris Ballard was on with Pat McAfee. He said, listen, at 15, we got the best pass rusher on our board, and we were going to take the best player, whether we thought it was corner. And then he even mentioned tight end. And we'll never know the answer to this. But good God, Stephen, if Brock Bowers would have been there at 15, along with Latu, just any idea? What do you think they would have eventually done there? We'll never know. And again, we'll never know.
Yeah. Just before I get to that answer, I would say I did watch that clip. And the one thing I took away from that is they absolutely, or Chris Ballard in that clip, he mentioned all the positions that we were discussing. So they were having the same discussion we were. So it made me feel better. He said defensive back. He said edge. He said tight end and receiver. And I said, oh, okay. So we were right. so that made me feel good. In terms of like the positions they were considering, those were their choices. So, all right. So we were on the nose pretty much. And this was not that hard to decipher. In terms of Brock Bowers, it would have been fascinating. I think it would have been tempting, and frankly, with the way they approached this draft, which was, I just talked about these offensive line picks being kind of luxury picks. I think if there was ever a draft where they could decide to just do whatever they wanted, this was it. And if Brock Bowers, if they saw a vision for him where he could have been, clearly elite in this offense, then I think they should have picked him and probably would have. But it is really hard to know. I do think the one thing that makes me hesitate, the one thing that makes me hesitate is that Chris Ballard is who he is. And this draft illustrated it as well as anything. That man cares about offensive line and defensive line. Okay? 3 out of the first 4 picks. I mean, can it be any clearer?
Yep.
Right? That man cares about the big men up front on both sides of the ball. It has governed him from day one, and it governed him throughout this draft as well. So I think in the end he might have broken into highs taking a tight end in the first round. I don't know if he could have done it, but Shane Steichen maybe would have given him the push. I don't know.
Again, Stephen Holder's with us here from ESPN. Stephen, obviously a lot of defensive back chatter exiting the draft. I get the vibe nothing is imminent there. Like, I almost believe they're going to get through a little bit of this offseason program, see how the rookies look, see how the development is for the second-year guys. I'm not expecting to wake up tomorrow and, boom, they've signed Justin Simmons and Steven Nelson. Do you get that similar vibe?
No, I don't think they will either. I do get a similar vibe. I think they are continuing to talk to people, and they always do that. They always kind of keep lines of communication open. Whether there have been offers made, I can't speak to that, but certainly there's been lines of communication open with various free agents. That has been made clear to me, and I don't know which ones they favor or so forth, but they clearly have an eye on some guys. Now, whether and when something happens, that's less clear. I do think they feel like they have the luxury of time here. There are still, numerous veteran safeties in particular available out there. Once that starts to move, they might feel some pressure, but that hasn't happened yet. So I don't know what that says about the guys who are out there. I mean, obviously Justin Simmons is a good player, but just generally speaking of that group of players that's out there, I don't know what it says about those guys. It might say they don't like the current offers, or it might say that there's not that much interest. I mean, I don't know how to interpret it, I guess. But the Colts are clearly higher on their secondary than maybe people on the outside. And Chris Ballard had been saying that, right, for weeks. He had said it at the owners' meetings. He said it in his pre-draft press conference. Some of us believed him more than others. I was starting to come around to believing him, actually. And I still kind of felt like, yeah, I hear him, but I don't know if I buy it completely. And then the draft basically answered that question once and for all. I mean, he didn't take a defensive back till the 6th round. I mean, if that doesn't confirm it, I don't know what does.
It was like pick 160-something, their first defensive back selection. Okay, one more on this end. NFL schedule, we're assuming, comes out here in the next couple of weeks. Typically, the NFL now has transitioned to kind of like an early to mid-May schedule release. Let's say it's, boom, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. That's the Week 1 opponent for the Colts. Let's say Aaron Rodgers stays healthy for the Week 1 game this season. Boom, you get to your first third down of the season. You throw out your nickel package. Are the 5 defensive backs the Colts throw out in Week 1 for that nickel package, are they all on the roster right now?
That's a great question. I say they will make one more signing. And I think this is in the vein of, I always use this example, but the Mike Adams signing, I mean, that's like forever ago, right? That was, I think, 2014. But I think that's the example here, because we're kind of in the same scenario, that late off season, evaluate what you have and then kind of go from there. I don't think they have to do that. Okay. I don't think they have to do it, but I think it would help Gus Bradley sleep better at night. I really do. So I'm going to say they sign one more, but I I wouldn't bet a whole lot of money on it, frankly. I mean, I think there's a chance they might not. I mean, I think there is a scenario where they say, let's roll the dice, let's see what we got, and we believe in these guys, and we can develop them. Is it risky? Yeah, because you could be wrong, but I also don't think they're like crazy. I don't think it's insane. I just like to have the comfort of having the veteran out there if it's me, but it's not me. So hey.
Yeah. Well, listen.
By the way,
go ahead.
A birdie told me May 9th on the schedule release, but you didn't hear that.
There you go. Week from tomorrow.
Are all the submissions in for the Colts where you could win the $1 million if you pick the schedule completely right? Obviously, something you would never do. So May 9th, we'll be looking at the schedule. What the NFL makes that entire TV show and everything for 2 days. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. Stephen Holder from ESPN joining us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. We're talking some Colts with him. A.D. Mitchell. So second round, they do some moving, but they still get the wide receiver, and we've talked so much about putting weapons around Anthony Richardson. What did you make of not only the Chris Ballard rant, but, Stephen, as we sit here today on May 1st, where do we begin the expectation conversation around A.D. Mitchell?
Yeah, so first off, I mean, the trade down was interesting because I was just looking at it a little while ago, and it's funny. They traded down, and I wondered, were they willing to lose him, right? And because clearly they liked him a lot. And they may have made a good call there because if you look at it, the teams in front of them, I don't think any of them were predicted to take wide receivers. Obviously, someone could jump up and take him, trade up and take him, so they were rolling the dice there. They must have had another option as well. But it was interesting that they traded down and still got the guy they want. They played that well, to give them credit. So the rant, I thought it was very interesting. That was one of the stories of the day, frankly, on Friday. I mean, there was a lot of interest in that story. It was interesting. Here's the more I think about it, the more I think this is what happened. Kevin and I talked about this the other night. I think it was a little bit, it was an honest take from Chris Ballard. I think he was genuinely miffed about the whole thing. However, it might have seemed a little over the top to you, right? If you just kind of rolled out of bed and just heard this for the first time, you're like, what? Why is he so mad? But to me, I wonder if he was just trying to take some heat off of A.D. Mitchell, because here's this kid now getting criticized, and when he gets picked, some of those reports now are being repeated on social media. People are texting each other links and all that. So that conversation starts again, right? Because his name comes up. And I think Chris Ballard anticipated us asking about it, which was natural, and probably anticipated us asking about it. And so before that conversation began, he just stepped in and said, okay, well, turn the gun on me. Terrible analogy, but take the bullet, so to speak, right? And he said he would take the fire instead of the criticism being directed to A.D. Mitchell. So I think that's what he was trying to do there. He was trying to say, you know what? Don't look at him. Look at me. I'll take it, and I'll put a stop to this right here. So I think that's kind of what he was doing, and he probably saw or heard that his initial interview with us, with the local media, it wasn't great. Granted, I don't really care, right? I don't care. This kid wasn't out there, committing crimes. He hadn't hurt anybody. He didn't do anything wrong per se. He's a kid. He needs to grow up, right? That is normal, all right? I wasn't on time for anything when I was 21 years old, right? I was a disaster. So I'm not appalled by anything in his so-called past. I'm really not, and I don't think any of us should be. But look, does he need to be an adult? Yes, and this is a job. This is the pros. This is pro football, right? So he's got to grow up. He's got to do what he's got to do, and I have no doubt that Shane Steichen will require that of him, and that Reggie Wayne is not going to give him a pass. So he's going to be fine in my estimation. And then there was another last part of your question.
Well, just like where do we begin expectation talk with him? Because, Pittman played 13 games, had 40 catches. That was with Phillip Rivers his rookie year. I know it's different. Josh Downs had over 60 catches last year, only had a couple touchdowns. Like, I don't even know where to begin. Is, 45, 50, touches? Is that too much? Is that not enough for being a second rounder? We have all offseason, Steven, to try to figure this out, I guess.
No, but it is a great question and very hard to handicap. I agree. But this is the beauty of it. Just, based on, to continue the thought that we just talked about, like, does he have to grow and all that? This is the beauty of it. He has to earn it. Okay? It really is up to him. I really believe it's up to him. If he comes in and he has the kind of impact that we think he's capable of, he's going to get opportunities, probably a lot of them, and that will be to Alec Pierce's dismay, quite frankly. Now, if he doesn't do what he needs to do, or maybe he's not completely up to par off the field, well, then those opportunities are going to be harder to come by. And so I don't know. I personally, I think he's probably going to be a guy who plays. I think him and Pierce probably split the reps. First of all, Alec Pierce doesn't need to play 70 snaps every game. Like, that's crazy, right?
He played the most snaps of any wideout in the NFL last year.
It's unbelievable. That's an unbelievable stat.
Right. First of all, give this guy a break, okay? Let's give him a break. Go get some Gatorade, and A.D. Mitchell, you go get some run. What if those guys split those reps? I think you will get a much more efficient deep passing game with Anthony Richardson. So there's a scenario where Alec Pierce plays fewer snaps but has more big plays. I know that sounds crazy, but he was just out there going through the motions last year. He wasn't getting the ball down the field. So, and he was open quite often. So there's a scenario where I think, just based on who's better at what route, that these guys probably share the snaps. One thing I'm interested to find out is A.D. Mitchell more diverse in his route tree versus Alec Pierce, because we haven't seen Alec Pierce be called upon to do as much. He has a very defined role. He's the deep guy. I want to see if he can do more, and obviously we'll see whether AD can do more as well and get some opportunities in the intermediate and short range as well.
I'll just add one more thing on the Ballard kind of rant front. I think anytime the door is slightly cracked for Chris Ballard to defend players, he's going to open that door and jump through it like no other. And I think that was another opportunity at that. And frankly, a person in his position that deals so much with players, he probably should do that. And I think that's just kind of
smart.
Yeah,
he knows what he's doing. He knows. I agree. That is a great point. I think, is it calculated? Probably a little bit. Yes,
but that's part of the job, frankly.
Yeah, there are politics, right? In being the leader of a billion-dollar organization, right? He gets that, and he deals with players. He needs to have credibility with those players. So, is there some, a personal aspect there where it reflects well on him, and that helps him with players? I mean, maybe I'm reaching. I don't know, but I don't think that's crazy.
See, we only got about a minute left. Do you think Kwity Paye's fifth-year team option that the deadline is tomorrow gets exercised or not?
It's so hard. I mean, $13 million today is not what it used to be. So it sounds like a lot of money. It's really not as much as you think. But I lean towards saying no, not because I don't think Kwity Paye belongs on this team, but I think it gives you the freedom to make some choices on how you proceed there, as opposed to locking yourself in. So that's my call, but I don't think it's a shoo-in. I wouldn't be shocked if they do it. It's not as much money as you think.
We get a good amount of those fifth-year options already been picked up by various teams. Colts have yet to do it. Tomorrow, the deadline for Kwity Paye. He's under contract no matter what for next year, but this is for the 2025 season. Steven, great stuff, man. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Steven Holder, Payless Liquors hotline again. Doug Boles, president of the Motor Speedway, going to join us here in 10. No better way to kick off the month of May. If you missed it, we had Elio Castroneves on the show on Monday, but Doug Boles coming up here in 10. Let's get to a morning check down. Reluctantly, have to talk some Pacers here.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Thank God both you and Corbin have not done the meme today it's going to be May.
Oh, he's
the
saving the
NSYNC
Timberlake.
thing.
He's saving
okay.
little Timberlake for 9 o'clock hour, he told me. You just wait.
Were you a Timberlake fan? I could see you being a Timberlake fan for some reason.
He's made some bangers.
Yes, he has. He's had a pretty good life.
He's had a very good life.
He's
I
had
would
a pretty
like to
good
have
life.
his life.
Me as well. All right, 115-92. That's your final last night. The Pacers go on the road. They try to close out the Bucks. It doesn't happen. They led by 8 at the end of the first quarter, but a disastrous second and third quarter. A lot of reserves playing in the fourth quarter, and that's what you get, a 23-point loss on the road. Pacers still lead the series, though, 3-2. We'll come back. We'll do it all tomorrow night at 6:30. Our coverage at 6 o'clock on the Fan. But let's jump into some of this sound. Why did they lose last night? That was a question posed to Rick Carlisle. Here's what he had to say.
But this series is about defense. Having them get, to 115 and us, 92. Our defense needed to be better. Our rebounding needed to be better. At halftime, we had 7 out of 19 loose balls, and that's just, that's just not close to being good enough. So we're going to have to do a lot better.
Yeah, the loose balls of defense not good enough. Didn't make the shots as well. I found it interesting. We'll get to Haliburton and the pace of play here in just a second. The Pacers had 10 assists in that first quarter. The end of the game with 25 assists, just 15 over the last 3 quarters. That is not Pacer-like at all. We've talked so much, KB, about pace. Game 1 and now Game 5, they didn't play their pace, and they lost those games. Here's Tyrese Haliburton on the pace of play last night.
Yeah, they did some a little different. They switched the matchups and stuff, but we just got stagnant, stopped making shots, stopped playing our brand of basketball, and ultimately, kind of fell into the way they play, a little bit of a slower pace than we do, and they controlled the pace tonight. Hell of a game for a lot of guys on their team, so kudos to them for coming out and being ready, and we got to be ready for next game.
I thought some wild lineups, honestly, last night. At the same time, I thought your starting unit, they got the wake-up call there in the second quarter. I was very interested how they would respond in the third, and Milwaukee punched them square in the mouth, and you were swimming upstream from there. We'll see if magically Giannis or Lillard appear in Game 6. Doc Rivers, for once in this series, seemed to be semi-optimistic post-game, but I'll believe it when I see it, as Andy said. 6:30 tip tomorrow night. The 9 o'clock tip tomorrow, it'll be the Knicks having to go to Philly to try and clinch that series. They just flat out blew it last night. 6-point lead, 30 seconds to go. Tyrese Maxey goes 4-point play. Josh Hart makes 1 or 2 free throws. And I thought it was really interesting because I think I probably speak for a lot of people. Everyone's kind of watching that game, waiting for the Pacers game to start.
Mm-hmm.
The Sixers did not have a timeout there. And so often in the NBA, Andy, you think of you take the timeout, you advance the ball. I almost thought them not having a timeout benefited them. They didn't advance it. So now the Knicks are sitting there being like, wait, we want time to bleed off a little bit before we foul.
Right, but we want to foul.
But we eventually want to foul.
But not too soon.
Tom Thibodeau's trying to scream and yell from the sidelines like he always does on when to commit that foul. And Maxey gets that pick set kind of like Lillard in this series when he's played. That pick gets set way high, almost at mid-court.
Yeah, at half court.
And Maxey pulls up from the logo. And
between the N and the E is where he shot the ball, between the N and the E of New York.
And Mitchell Robinson's like, oh, wait, you're going to shoot it from there? And boom, he drills it. Maxey just incredible per usual. I think the Pacers have seen that firsthand this season as well. So that's going to go to a Game 6. The Cavs beat the Magic last night. So tonight we'll see if the Celtics, a little banged up, can beat the Heat at home and clinch that one. And then out west, the only series left, 2-2, Cavs and Mavs.
Yeah, just one thing to add, Porzingis not going to play tonight.
We'll see about Tatum.
Yeah,
he twisted that
they've
ankle?
already come out as doubtful on him. And, that's a calf injury. And you're looking at Giannis. He's over 3 weeks now into this, and he is not back. And if, normally you would ramp up. So this is looking like at least a 4-week injury for Giannis. You got to think that Porzingis is going to miss not only then they're going to beat the Heat the remainder of this series. You got to think he misses another series, right? If you're Boston, next series, he's not going to be available.
Yeah.
It's a big loss.
That looked very weird and awkward. Not a lot from Major League Baseball, good news-wise. Pretty much all the local teams lost. Paul Skeens, 6 innings over at Victory Field last night, 7 strikeouts. He continues to mow down batters on a routine basis there. as he gets his longest start of the season.
Yeah, get out there to Victory Field if you're going to watch him and pay the few dollars to watch him because he's going to be in the majors sooner rather than later. All right, May is here. That's going to be my tease, Corbin. Is that good enough for you? May is here. We'll talk with Doug Boles, President, IMS. We'll do it next year. Wake up call 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate restrictions.
Corbin.
Predicting that would be played. Frankly, I had it before 8:30. I didn't think we'd get halfway through the show.
Well, no offense. Mark would have played it early on. That's no offense to Corbin. Corbin I don't see as being a boy band fan, even though, he would have been 13 years old.
Mark strikes me as more 98 degrees. Maybe not in sync. It is going to be
Lachey.
May. Is that what we're going with there on that one?
That's the meme. That's the Facebook meme today.
It is May 1st. We're efforting Doug Boles here. Obviously a very busy man this time of year, so we'll get to him in just a second. Andy, we've done this, or I guess we started yesterday. We'll continue to do it throughout this week and into next week, getting to know a Colts draft pick each day. And we're going mullet man here. Is that right?
Yeah, we're going Tanner Bortolini, right? Now, that is how you say his last name. Tanner Bortolini, 6'4", 305, out of Wisconsin, where they breed offensive linemen that wear mullets and play football at a high level.
And if we have to interrupt for Doug Boles, we will push this here a little bit later. But, it's interesting. Bortolini goes round 4. Again, this is a guy that I had mocked to the Colts in round 4.
You did. Good for you.
Matt Gonzalez went round 3. But as I said when we talked about Gonzalez yesterday, I see much more light at the end of the tunnel for Bortolini's future with the Colts than I do Gonzalez. And that's not to say, Gonzalez is going to be a bad player compared to Bortolini. I just think Bortolini screams center of the future.
Right.
Ryan Kelly turns, I think, 31 next week. He's expressed, I'd like to play a 10th season. He'll be a free agent. Year 10 would be next year. Whereas, again, Gonzalez, it's a little bit uncertain exactly positionally where he's going to fit in. So, uber athlete, by all accounts, extremely intelligent individual. The Mohawk looks outstanding. And the hope here is you stop the revolving door that Andrew Luck really had. I mean, when you think about it, Luck had all those centers. Samson Satele, Colin Holmes, A.Q. Shipley, Jonathan Harrison. Really, until you drafted Kelly, you had a revolving door at center. Well, now the hope is you can sustain that for Anthony Richardson a bit and make sure that he's got kind of a center of the future. So that's where how I view, I guess, Tanner Bortolini.
Yeah, and I know the Zoom that he did with you guys, Bortolini talked about it. He's like, I have played basically everywhere on the offensive line, but especially the inside offensive line, right? He's played everywhere, including center, which is, a little bit of a specialty. You can't throw anyone just in on center. And so you think, hey, he can play both guard spots. He can play the center spot as well. And I think, the thing that sticks out for me is the back-to-back picks that Ballard had at offensive line. He's taking offensive linemen not when he is in dire need, right, to take one. Stephen Holder called it a little bit of a luxury, and it was. But, if you told me that these guys ended up absolutely seeing the field or somehow factoring into games for the Colts this year with what we saw. How many guys missed time? 3 or 4 guys on that offensive line last year missed time?
Yeah, mainly it was Blake Freeland.
Mainly.
Mainly it was Braden Smith, Blake Freeland, and for Braden Smith.
Quinn Nelson had times where he was out. So, I think for me, fortifying this offensive line to where you don't have to hurry and get somebody. And we know, if some of these guys leave, we know whether you like it or not, that Ballard hasn't went deep into free agency. He just doesn't. So now you have a couple guys. You probably have, 3, 4 guys that, that you can kind of help build up. And if this next group doesn't come through, they're injured, you don't re-sign them. A couple different guys hitting the end of their contract. You have it out on a couple different contracts. You now have a couple guys in Gonzalez and Bortolini.
Not a big wingspan, lack of strength. I think some questions there with Bortolini, so it might be good. Honestly, kind of a year and a little bit more of a professional weight room, nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. One thing to note about Bortolini, and I guess kind of going off that, to me, it's always easier to add strength than athleticism. So I think that kind of makes sense with the Colts' belief here. But you mentioned the versatility of him in college, Andy. 13 starts at center, and they had a very high-level center before him. I think it was Joe Tippmann, if I'm remembering correctly there. But there are other spots. Bortolini, 8 starts at left guard, 3 at right guard, even 3 at right tackle. You typically don't see all of that. So 4 positions where he started at least 3 games, certainly that would aid him as well. So, again, I don't expect, unless injuries occur, major impact from him and or Matt Gonzalez early. Maybe Will Fries gets a little bit more competition, unlike he had last year during training camp. But this is very much center of the future vibes. And I would be willing to bet, Andy, if you looked at the 32 starting centers from around the league, I'd say 90% of them are drafted round 4 or later. It's not a position.
Right.
The Ryan Kellys of the world get drafted 18 overall. And they play center.
You're not taking them in the first round most of the time.
This gets more into kind of the roster building approach, and this is something that I agree with. I don't think you should have, first day, second day investment at center mid-round pick, good by me. And the goal will be to try to give Anthony Richardson something for, a decent amount of time.
All right, two things on this, and you've mentioned it, and we got to give you props, okay? So you nailed this pick. This is you said they were going to take Bortolini in the 4th round, and KB, they took Bortolini in the freaking 4th round. I mean, that is, now, it was pick 117.
I also thought the Pacers would roll last night, if we want to be fully honest here.
Well,
I thought the Bucks were dead.
And we all thought he would, Ballard would take a corner somewhere early in the draft, and he took one in the 6th round from Marshall. That's what he decided to do. But with Bortolini, I can't remember looking at your mock draft now, and I should have pulled this up. You had him in the 4th round. Did you say which pick it was going to be? Did you nail the pick? Because he ended up being pick 117.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay, so what? So do you remember what pick you had there?
Yeah, I had him as 117th pick. Yeah.
Oh, so you had that? That's an exacto.
Right. Yes.
So you had the full exacto.
Correct.
Oh. You need to be paraded around IMS on a Corvette or something like that. I mean, good God.
We aren't bringing up the 6 other picks, or again, we aren't bringing up my Pacers money line action from last night.
Everybody is wrong on mock drafts. You never get it
well,
right.
Last
but
year
you
got 3 of them. Last year we had 3 of them. We had Richardson, we had Evan Hall, we had Blake Freeland. So
boy, that's pretty good.
Four right in the last 2 years. I will happily.
You'll have to start paying attention. Corbin, start paying attention to this guy over here now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 picks later, a punter went. We haven't talked to Mark Dykton about this. His Bears took a punter in the 4th round.
Kid? Oh, yeah, that was right. I did see Caleb Williams tell me he wouldn't be punting.
Tory Taylor. And everyone immediately was like, why the hell are you taking a punter? They're like, well, it is Iowa.
The Colts went offense 4 of the first 5 picks, Andy. Again, obviously, Leatu Latu right away at 15, and then 4 straight offensive picks. A.D. Mitchell, the wideout. We've talked about the 2 offensive linemen, and then Anthony Gould we'll get into tomorrow out of Oregon State. That is just the 2nd time in the last decade they have done that. 4 of the first 5 picks being on offense. And to me, that is a way to support your young quarterback. Way to try and support your young quarterback there. I hate to audible on air. Should we break it up here to get to Doug Boles maybe on the other side?
Well, we should. So Doug was doing, another interview, Corbin? Okay, so he's doing another interview. So I think he's calling in right now. You want to do that? You want to take a break here?
Yeah, as long as that's not him, Corbin, is it?
It's not him. Okay, yeah.
Let's take a break and then get to the President Speedway.
Let's take an early break here. Doug Boles, he'll join us next segment. We'll do it next. It's May. What happens in May stays in May. We'll talk about May. Indy 500 coming up here in a couple weeks. We'll do it all. Doug Boles joins us, president of IMS. He does it on this Wednesday on The Fan.
The laundry room.
Mini marathon weather, Andy, for Saturday. Looking fairly good. Looks like a rainy Friday. Boy, that probably going to be a little bit of a warmer start for the mini marathon than usual.
You going to be out there? You running it? Or are we going to be at the finish line with your family with big posters? Congratulations.
I'll pass out maybe some water about mile marker 5 there. Shout out to Brad Bowen. Ran very, very many marathons over the course of his years. Maybe he's made up for his son not taking part in it. But yeah, weather looks great. Weather looks outstanding for that.
I know people that do the mini marathons every year. They do a few every year, and God bless them for doing that.
Do we have another Bally issue we need to address?
Yeah, I saw this. I did not see this until the morning, but I had a few people DM me that apparently Bally's and Xfinity, so that would be Comcast, right, are having a little bit of a spat right now to where you're not getting Bally's. Now, the rest of this series shouldn't be affected, right? You're going to get nationally televised
as long as
games.
you have TNT. Now, again, there might be some people that have cut the cord and they just have the Bally app.
Right.
With the app, but
which is me.
The app would not be impacted, right?
Yeah, I rewatched part of the game on the app this morning, so I went back and did a rewind. So I will test this theory coming up on Thursday. I told the guy, I go, well, don't worry about Bally's. You're not have to worry about that. And he goes, well, I want to watch my Reds. I go, oh yeah.
We'll talk with Alex Golden more about this here in a few. But let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline. He is the one and only, the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Doug Boles, to kick off the month of May. Doug, good morning to you. Thank you as always.
Good morning. Sorry I'm a little late. We got a little behind here at the airport as we unveiled our new Big Spill milk display here that welcomes everybody when they come to the city of Indianapolis and reminds them that it's May and it's time to go racing.
I absolutely love that. Now, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. It might have been during Little 5 week. I teach a class at IU, Doug, and a couple of my students come in on, I think it was Thursday or maybe it was Tuesday. All the days run together at this point. And they go, hey, last night the president of the Motor Speedway was at Upstairs Pub trying to promote the Indianapolis 500. And I thought to myself, that sounds like Doug Boles, 2 birds with 1 stone. 1, you're promoting the 500. 2, you're enjoying a cold one on a college campus during Little 500 week. That had to be pretty good.
It was actually really cool. We even took the Borg Warner Trophy down there and took it up in the Upstairs Pub, which was really – it may have been one of the more unique places that trophy's been in the last 50 years. But it was a blast. I had a great time, and I did enjoy a couple of it was $2 Tuesday, I think.
Oh, God.
And, you got $2 beers. I'm like, this is a pretty good deal. So I definitely had to have a beer. It was interesting that we got there, and the crowd was a little older to begin with because we promoted that we were going to have the Borg there, and then as the evening went on, it got a lot younger and a lot more fun. So it was it was a great time.
Yeah, the music changes. Yeah, everything just changes a little bit. But $2 Tuesday, that did some damage to Kevin Bowen back in the day.
$2 Tuesday sounds fantastic. Doug Boles with us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. I was reading an interview with you a couple years ago. You said, hey, we want to make the fan experience even better. So what have you guys done in the last year or so to make that fan experience better? And where are we with ticket sales right now for the 500?
So, one of the things since Roger Penske bought the Speedway, he's put about $60 million into the Speedway, and by that, mostly into the customer experience, which has been fantastic to just watch him listen and learn and say, hey, I want to invest in X, Y, and Z. And this year, we spent a lot of time focused on our GA ticket holders, so the folks that don't have a reserve seat but that sit on the grandstands or sit in the mounds or sit in the infield. So we've got some new video boards up to really enhance that experience for those customers. I'm really excited about those along our spectator mounds. That'll be great for our road course racing as well as the oval. We've created a new grab and go concession stand in behind the pagoda. We're trying to make it easier so you're not standing in line as long. Just little things like that really this year. New video board on the back of turn 4. So if you watch the race from your seats in turn 4, and you went out to get a concession stand, there was no way to keep up with the racing. So we've got a great big video board up there so people can make sure they know what's going on. So little things like that this year that Rogers really helped us invest in. And then in terms of ticket sales, they just continue, and this is a testament to the community and to our fans. It has nothing to do with us. But the fact that our fans who come love it so much and can't wait to invite new people and bring new people, and then those people continue to come back and get their own tickets. As of yesterday, we were about 15,000 reserve seat units up on last year, at this time. So we're on track to have another epic year for the 500. Yesterday was a huge ticket sales day because our prices increase on May 1st. So it's going to be a good crowd. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, we can sell out those reserve seats.
Do you know how many are left from a reserve seat standpoint?
I think we're somewhere under about 12,000 right now. So when you think about 235,000 total seats, you've got over 90% of the venue completely sold out right now.
Wow, that is quite impressive. Is there any way to measure, Doug? Have you felt like the Kyle Larson impact at all? I don't know how much vetting you do with some of that stuff.
Anecdotally, I mean, I've heard from some folks who have. In fact, I talked yesterday to somebody they're bringing three motorhomes in and going to do the Indy 500. Never done it before because they're Kyle Larson fans. So I think there is a little bit of an effect from him. I think where we'll really see that, I think over the next few weeks is when people really realize that that's happening. We'll see, but there's a little bit of an impact, but I don't know how much. We'll certainly know. At the end of the month, when we look at those ticket holders and if they renew or not, and they're single, like their first time, then we're going to go, okay, that was a Kyle Larson person.
Always enjoy our conversations. Doug Boles, he is with us here to kick off the month of May, the president of the Motor Speedway, with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. All right, Doug, we talked with you last year, the Monday after the race. You mentioned, the two biggest items, which I think are pretty understandable given the amount of people you have in that place come May 26th. Concessions and traffic. Anything specific on that end that you guys have tried to do to somewhat, I guess, limit lines and increase a little bit more flow traffic-wise?
Absolutely. So I'll start with concessions. So we actually have a brand new concessions partner who's been working with us really since the beginning of the year. We worked with a concession partner for 10 years, and we've moved to a new one. And that new one actually came before they even knew they were going to get to work. They brought an entire team in on race day last year and started at 2 a.m. and walked the facility and watched how it all worked and had a great plan in place for this year. So I think that's going to be really helpful. I just mentioned the grab and go that'll be in the plaza area. So we're really focused on that. On traffic, the one great thing about our community is when we all see an issue, we all work together. And by all, I mean everybody. So state police, local, Speedway, IMPD, all of those law enforcement agencies. So we've all gotten together and really thought through some of the areas. So one of the things that was closed last year, the exit ramp at Lafayette Road and Georgetown Road, you couldn't get off there, and we're not sure why. So that's going to be open back up again, which will help. We've got some new outbound routes and lanes where we're adding lanes, moving people out. So I feel like we have a good plan in place to eliminate especially some of that wait that takes place when everybody tries to leave. I'll say that with the caveat that it's 330,000 people trying to leave at the same time. I mean, you're going to have traffic problems. It's just the way that it is. But it's definitely something I feel like we've made some incremental adjustments that are going to make a difference. And I'll tell you what, if we talk on Monday after the race this year, my two big things probably will be concession lines and traffic. We're always working on it, but we've really focused on that. We had helicopters, drones, all kinds of things up during the race last year, and we took almost 40,000 pictures and video, and we've just gone through those and combed through them to figure out, how the traffic flow comes in, where they park, and then how it goes out. So when you think about those, call it 12 hours of taking pictures, we've had a whole team really trying to figure out how we can make a difference. And the 4 or 5 traffic changes we made really stem from things we learned from those photos.
Interesting stuff there from Doug Boles. The other thing that popped in my mind, and I think this was announced a little bit ago, you guys did increase that catch fence where Kyle Kirkwood's tire bounced over there of what? I guess it would have been kind of the start of turn 2?
Actually, the catch fence is the same. We did change some of the safer wall and some of the safer foam. The way we ended up addressing that challenge was, immediately when it was over with Dallara. So Dallara made a change to the cars. And then made an additional enhancement to the cars later in the summer. So we think that that's the biggest culprit in that was the actual fact that the car component had failed or didn't, and it had never been tested like it was tested, and that it was a really unique impact. So we believe we're in good shape there as it relates to those tires deciding to fly or not.
Doug Boles with us, President IMS. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline on this Wednesday. So, Doug, I can't wait to meet you. You know, I've covered big events, whether it be, Kentucky Derbies or Final Fours or college football playoff games, but I have not covered an Indianapolis 500. Now, I've been to the track several times, but I can't wait to cover this event. The lead up in May, and then obviously we'll be out there. KB will be. I've heard so much about his drinking on Carb Day, right? So that day, and then obviously the 500 day. So I'm just kind of taking the temperature in the room from different people. So I'll ask you, give me a do and give me a don't as we get closer and closer to the 500. Something that I need to look out for and something that I need to avoid. What do you got for me?
Well, the most important thing to do is you should hang out with somebody like KB when it's your first event. The best way to enjoy it and understand it is go with somebody that can help you navigate through. Because especially when you put 330,000 people in that place, you can't explain it. You just can't until you experience it. And having somebody to say, hey, let me tell you how to get here or do that, it's really important. So go with somebody. A couple beers in your body always makes life a little bit better.
Sure.
Too. So
yes, sir.
Make sure you're enjoying that. And then I think the thing not to do is seriously don't come expecting to get in 10 minutes and out in 10 minutes. If you've got something scheduled for later that afternoon or that evening on race day, cancel it or push it to 9 o'clock at night because it really does become a challenge. But, the biggest thing for me, the thing I love the most is just the people watching. It is every walk of humanity that comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You get the most serious of serious race fans to the person who could care less that a race is going and they want to go to the snake pit and listen to music, or they just want to see what they've got in their cooler and see how many beers they can drink in 12 hours. I mean, it is a fascinating opportunity for people watching. And what I love the best is we all put politics and differences aside, and we just come celebrate the fact that this race has happened now 108 times, and summer's around the corner in Indiana, and we just celebrate together the fun of being a Hoosier, even if you're not from Indiana, when you're inside the venue that day.
Amen to that. Very, very well said. Doug, last one from me. I was probably a little skeptical of full transparency on the whole eclipse thing, and I was shocked by the numbers that you guys sent out. Not only the amount of people, but I want to say the number that you mentioned, and obviously correct me, 80% of people that were there, it was their first time at IMS for that?
So transparently, I was shocked too. We announced that we were going to have an Eclipse event on April 8th, 2018. We had no idea what that meant and thought, maybe 1,000 people will show up, but we wanted to announce that we were going to do it. And we had close to 50,000 people come, which is really just crazy. It was pretty neat to see all those folks on the front stretch and then turn one watching the eclipse and listening to them cheer when the moon covered the sun and cheer again when it came back. 80% of the folks that bought tickets had never purchased anything from us before. I would guess that of that group, half of them probably had never been there before. So if you go to the Indy 500 every year and you sit in family seats, but you don't buy them, we don't have your account. So a lot of those folks had been to the 500 before, but just had never had their own account. So I would say at least half of them had never been there. And you could see those people, right? When they walked in and looking around like, where am I supposed to go? You could go, hey, you've never been here before, have you? And they go, no, I've never been here. So, but to have that many people in our community, we had every state in the union. We had like 30 countries that were represented in that crowd. It was a pretty magical day. And all of the national news that covered our community, our city, because our weather was going to be so good, it was a fascinating way just to elevate the community of Indianapolis through a once-in-a-lifetime, at least in central Indiana, opportunity watching eclipse.
You just flat out get it, and I know that might not sound like the greatest compliment, but I think it is. The rich tradition, the history of it, and then if you need to show up to a $2 Tuesday, you will, and that is exactly what the Speedway needs. Doug, can't thank you enough, man. Let us know if there's anything you need us to pub out here the rest of the month, and hopefully we can have you on a couple more times.
Well, here's what I need is if you're drinking beers on Carb Day, you got my number. Text me and I'll come have a beer with you.
Done.
Especially by the time the on-track's over and pit stop competition's over, at that point in time, the rest of the day for me is just watching people, and it's more fun to watch people if you got a beer in your hand.
Hey, you know where we're at. Pagoda Plaza. We will be there coming up on Carb Day. Thank you, Doug.
All right, guys. Yeah, we'll see you. Thank you.
3.5 weeks away from the 108th running of the Indianapolis 500. I know that was your conversation.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Conversation with Doug Boles. I mean this. Like, he just gets it. I mean, I think it's a very difficult thing to try and make sure the generational, we've been at every 500 for 50x years and all this stuff, like to try to appease that group, but then all of a sudden make sure that when you pass the torch one day, you've got the next generation ready to go. He's done an unbelievable job with that. I've brought up this story before. My sister-in-law, she graduated college just a couple years ago. She's been kind of an infielder.
Mm-hmm.
And she hangs out with the college kids, and obviously there's a lot in there that's different than the race. And this year, when we started to kind of count up tickets, she's like, no, I want to sit with you guys. and like, that's exactly what he's trying to do.
So she's done with the infield.
Right.
She's grown up and wants to sit at the not the kids table. What do you call it? The grown-up table.
Sure.
The adults. Okay.
And I'm thinking to myself, this is exactly what Doug Boles wants. If you can get 10% of the infield to one day be one of the 235,000. So that is the number. Again, reserve seats he mentioned, they've sold about 223 of the 235,000. That is up 15,000 from this time last year. And I think I speak for everyone. 4 to 5 new traffic patterns post-race. Music to a lot of people's ears.
Oh, yeah. You just know getting in and getting out
it's never
is going to take
easy,
some time.
But it's nice to hear some changes.
How about that 40,000 pictures and video that they took over a 12-hour span to try to help patterns and stuff like that. So give them all the credit in the world. I cannot wait as we go here over the next 3 weeks or so. All right, on the other end, Alex Golden going to join us, Setting the Pace podcast. What happened to the Pacers? What bothered him about last night? And can they get the win coming up tomorrow? We'll discuss all of that next. It's a Wednesday here on The Fan.
The Ride with
.47%. Portis, silky smooth, mid-range, Jay.
Halftime in Milwaukee in Game 5. It's the Milwaukee Bucks 53, the Indiana Pacers 48.
Milwaukee with possession. They're 3 of their first 4 from the field. Portis elevates and hits.
Final in Game 5, the Milwaukee Bucks 115, the Indiana Pacers 92. Milwaukee now trailing 3 games to 2.
I think we just got to understand that, they're a team that's on the brink of their season being done, and, they're playing desperate, they're playing hard, as they should be. And we, at the end of the day, they outcompeted us tonight. They played harder, played better. They kind of just dominated us in every facet of the game tonight. So we got to be better. Starts with me and that first group, but we just got to be better top to bottom.
A depressing as hell opening montage there from Corbin Lingenfelter. Great work, Corbin. You got to paint the picture, and it was ugly, ugly, ugly last night. We'll talk more about it as the series now will return to Gainbridge Field. Now 6:30 tomorrow night, the Pacers will go for the clinch. Alex Golden from Setting the Pace. Alex, I was so wrong about last night. I thought the Bucks were dead. I thought the Pacers would win comfortably. I clearly was, again, dead wrong on that. What changes, I guess, specifically did you see from Milwaukee and maybe didn't see from Indiana?
Yeah, and I think I was right there with you, KB. I really thought that Indiana would come out and kind of show that they could be a mature basketball team. But once again, they let us down, because it feels like every year or every time this year there's been an opportunity for the Pacers to, break away or something, and something good happened for them. They just don't show up to play. And, I thought that the first quarter, it looked all right. I know Rick Carlisle said he wasn't, overly pleased with how they played in the first quarter, but still had an 8-point lead. I felt pretty good going into the second quarter, but some of the rotations I thought were really questioning last night from Indiana's standpoint. I feel like the bench has not been as good as it was in the regular season as it's been in this series. I think McConnell and Obi Toppin are a minus in the plus-minus department 5-game series. And so I just think that Indiana, they got a little bit too comfortable. I think winning 3 games in a row started feeling themselves a little bit, and they didn't come in here and play their style. Like, if you were there at Game 3 or 4 to watch the Pacers play in person, and what you watched last night, it looked like a totally different team. No intensity. And Milwaukee, they were the more desperate team, as Tyrese Haliburton said in this opening that we had before this segment started. But I'm tired of hearing that excuse. You don't want to give a team that's got Giannis and Dame potentially coming back any life. And I know they're in front of their home crowd, but I was just incredibly disappointed with their efforts last night. Couldn't believe how poorly they played altogether.
Alex Golden, you can check him out on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA, Setting the Pace podcast there if you want to catch his work. Let's go to the Rick Carlisle side of things. What is fair criticism with his lineups, and why do you think he did what he did?
Okay, so, I understand why they're playing McDermott a little bit in the first quarter. Don't always agree with it, but the Bucks have a pretty good zone, and McDermott came in there, hit a 3, one of the first plays that he's in. So that's why he's out there, to be that zone buster. And I think that the Pacers, which is just kind of crazy to think about, Danilo Gallinari, even as old as he is still giving the Pacers problems. And he gave them problems at the beginning of the year when he was with the Wizards and he was playing like backup 5. Well, Doc Rivers has found something there with Gallo. And so I think the reason you saw Isaiah Jackson come into the game was to try to kind of match that. I don't necessarily agree with it, because Isaiah Jackson hasn't played significant minutes in this entire series. So to throw him in there in Game 5 when, you got down big, you cut it to 9, it just felt like every bit of momentum they had there in the third quarter to try to make this somewhat of a game and come back after starting out so poorly in the third quarter. I didn't really understand why you go to an all-bench lineup with Tyrese Haliburton out there at that moment with like 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes left in the third quarter. So I thought that, some of the decisions were interesting, but, I just don't think that Rick Carlisle I don't understand Rick Carlisle's decisions all the time, especially playing an 11-man rotation as he did last night. So you have to kind of just move on and let it be what it is. But I think that this team has looked better when they played an 8-man rotation. Starters play a little bit of heavy minutes. And I know the starters weren't great last night. Don't get me wrong, they weren't good, but at least they got things going for you in the first quarter. I think everything kind of went to crap there at the end of the first, beginning of the second, when Obi Toppin got that technical foul, keeping the ball from Patrick Beverly. They had like a stretch there where they got outscored like 16-2 before Haliburton hit a 3 with like 6.5 minutes left in the second quarter. It was just a lot of bad stuff happened, and the rotations didn't help. But I just think this Pacers offense, bench-wise, they have not been able to really put together much this series, in my opinion. And I think Ben Shepherd has probably been the most consistent bench player, even though I know Obi Toppin had good moments in Games 3 and Games 4 in front of the home crowd.
Yeah, I thought the substitutions, Alex, it lacked urgency and like trying to halt runs. You know, it seemed like in games 2, 3, and 4, there had been kind of a quick trigger and like, all right, it's starting to snowball a little bit. Let's get some of those guys back in there. And I just didn't feel that last night. I understand throwing McDermott out there against the zone, but again, it just seemed like stuck with that group. And in the third quarter, too. I mean, I looked up midway through the third quarter. I'm like, damn, he's got Haliburton in there with the bench. And you know, and your starters had made a little bit of a run. So just something else to add there on that end. Again, Alex Golden is with us here, setting the pace. A great listen for Pacers fans out there. They've responded quite well really all season long. I think it has been a staple of this team. Certainly we saw it on a big stage, game 1 to game 2. Do you think the response feeling is different, Alex, in that now you can make the argument the pressure is more on the Pacers? The bullseye might be a little bit more on the Pacers, considering how this series has unfolded and just the inevitable pressure that you have for a clinch game on your home floor up 3-2.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest game of any series is a closeout game, right? You know, you have this opportunity to figure things out, but you're going to get the other team's best punch, and they've got nothing to lose because they're throwing everything out there just to try to get this victory. And as well as the Pacers have played the Bucks all season long, with or without Giannis, with or without Lillard, it's just hard to beat a team 4 times in a row. So the fact that Indiana has won 3 in a row, they lost last night, obviously, I think that did play a factor. I mean, the home crowd has been incredible. I've been at both home games, and you can just feel the energy. And I think the crowd has actually kind of willed the Pacers to some runs there just because of the energy they're bringing. And I think that worked a little bit in Milwaukee's favor last night. I mean, Bobby Portis, Malik Beasley, Pat Bev, they all had probably their best game of the series. And I don't think that's going to probably be replicated in game 6 in Indiana. I think role players usually play better at home. So hopefully the Pacers can kind of withstand what happened, put it behind them. But you said it right. They've done a great job of putting, you know, bad games behind them and responding all season long. I don't really remember if they've had too many like multiple game losing streaks, maybe like 1 or 2 throughout the season, but like not a lot. So I think they'll respond. I think they're going to play great. I think it's going to be a really close game, though. I don't think it's going to be one where
I agree.
It's a blowout. I think it's going to be a nail biter to the end. And, you know, if the Pacers want to win this series, they have to win Game 6 because I just don't envision them going back to Milwaukee and winning a Game 7 on the road. It just does not seem like that's the greatest opportunity or the greatest place to put yourself if you're the Pacers. I think you have to win this game.
Alex, let's talk about Pascal Siakam. The first 2 games, 36 points, 12 rebounds in those first 2 games. Shot 65% from the field, even made 4 out of 8 3-pointers. The last 3 games, though, not so good. 14 points, 7 rebounds, dipped down over 20 percentage points, shooting just 41%. And we'll get to the free throw line here in a second. But what do you make of the uneven play with Pascal Siakam? And now under 50% from the line in this series, knowing how much he shoots the ball and dribbles the ball, boy, that could really, really hurt the Pacers going forward. I thought it hurt him last night as well. How worrisome is the free throw shooting, and what do you make of his uneven play through 5 games?
Yeah, so the free throw shooting, like, let's just start there for a second because it's been atrocious. And I was sitting there watching him pregame shoot free throws, and he doesn't shoot his free throws like he shoots his jump shot. He adds like this extra little hitch into it. I posted a video on Twitter last night just so if anybody wants to look at it. It just doesn't look normal. It's like he kind of turns his wrist out and then tries to straighten it up as he's releasing. It's a very weird thing. And he spreads his legs out a little bit further than his shoulders. I don't know if it's a mental thing. He's trying to fix something, but it doesn't look good at all. And obviously the results have been, you know, representative of what he's doing in terms of his form, and it's just not working. But in terms of overall play, I think if you go back to games 1 and 2, they had Brook Lopez guarding him, and he was able to use his speed to kind of take advantage of a slower big. They've changed that up, and they did double team him a little bit more in games 3 and games 4, and they've kind of just allowed Bobby Portis just to say, okay, Bobby, we're going to leave you on him. And I feel like Bobby Portis has outplayed him in a few games this series, and that just can't happen. Pascal Siakam has to step up and be better. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He just has to be better, more efficient with the basketball. You know, make better shot choices. Like I don't think he shot the ball as much in the home games because of the defensive coverages, and guys like Miles Turner have been just going off, and Tyrese had some bigger games offensively, so it wasn't a necessity. But you got to find a balance of who he was in games 1 and 2 versus who he was in games 3 and 4, and that needs to kind of be who he is for game 6 because they need Pascal Siakam to be a 20-point scorer if they're going to have success in the playoffs. They can't rely on, Turner and Obi Toppin and other guys putting in so many points offensively, because that's what he does. He is an offensive scorer. So I agree with you, Andy. I feel like Pascal Siakam's been a little bit underwhelming the last couple of games. You won the game 4, so it didn't matter as much. But when you're on the road and you're in a tough environment like that, a guy that's won a championship, he's got to be better, and he's got to kind of set that tone for the Pacers with this young roster that's still trying to figure out how to win and be a good playoff team.
And Alex Golden is with us here. Setting the Pace is the podcast. He's here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Alex, you're reading, I guess, the same tea leaves we are. Doc Rivers, to me, has not really given any sort of real optimism on Damian Lillard and or Giannis Antetokounmpo for a while. And then all of a sudden, late last night after the game, he's like, well, I think they're very, very, very close. As you read the tea leaves, do you think Giannis and or Lillard will be out there tomorrow night at 6:30?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. It could be gamesmanship. It could be him trying to, give that confidence to his team. I mean, maybe they could be coming back. It's interesting that Giannis still hasn't played. It's been about 3 to 4 weeks now since he's been out with the injury, Dame, the Achilles. And there was a report that I saw last night from Eric Nehm, who covers the Bucks for The Athletic, and he was talking about how they haven't even seen Giannis do anything. Everything's been closed-doored. So it's kind of interesting that there's been no availability to the media to see what Giannis is doing. So, like you guys said, I think on the previous segment or before you guys had on your previous guest, it's hard to believe it until you see it, right? And so, if you're Indiana, though, you have to expect that they're going to play just to be ready for it, like Carlisle said. But I think that Giannis and Dame playing, does that make the Pacers want to come out there and prove it even more? Because we've seen them rise to the occasion when they play teams at their full strength. And when they play teams that aren't at their full strength, they seem to struggle. So I'm not saying that's what you want in this series, but if Giannis comes back, how rusty will he be? Could it impact the flow that this team's got in the last, 36 minutes from the last game? So it could disrupt a little bit, but at the same time, it's one of the top 3 players in the NBA probably in Giannis, and Dame has found ways to torch Indiana offensively, and I think that not having Dame out there defensively has helped Milwaukee. Certainly in this last game specifically, but I just feel like you just don't want to mess around with that. You don't want to give them any opportunity to have those guys come out there and take control of the series. But it's hard to believe Doc at this point, but it probably does seem like that's the most optimistic he's been about Giannis at least playing in this series.
Alex Golden with the Setting the Pace podcast. You can find him there. Always great stuff, and he joins us here on this Wednesday on the Payless Liquors hotline. If you remember on Facebook back in the day when it said relationship status, you could put "it's complicated" back in the day. I know it's a very dated term using Facebook, and I think thus far through 5 games, it's a little bit complicated with Tyrese Haliburton, right? We've seen a couple good games. We've also seen game 1 and the other night not doing too much. I don't know. I'm looking around the NBA, Alex, and I'm seeing Jalen Brunson being great. I'm seeing Tyrese Maxey. Hell, even Banchero last night had 39 points, and Donovan Mitchell's had some big games, and I know that Haliburton's a different player, and I know that Rick Carlisle would hate what I'm saying right now, that they need 6, 7, 8 guys scoring in double figures, and that's the strength of their team. But also, at some point, I need a little bit of urgency, and it seems like we still go, 10 possessions, Alex, where, Haliburton's not even getting the ball to where he might score or could score. What do you make of his play through 5 games? I don't really know any other way to pose a question. 16 points last night. What do you make of what they're doing with him, how they're guarding him, and how he's playing through 5 games?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're guarding him pretty well. I mean, Patrick Beverley did a really good job, has done a really good job all series on him. There's no doubt about that. I think you saw Tyrese kind of have a scoring outburst in the third quarter of Game 4 when Patrick Beverley was on the sideline, right? And I mean, nobody wants to give Patrick Beverley any credit here for what he's doing because he's a very unlikable player to play against, especially if you're a Pacers fan. But what he's done defensively has been impactful, and I think he's done a really good job of it. Now, I will say this. I thought Tyrese was really good in Games 3 and Games 4. I know that Game 2, he was better than he was in Game 1, but that wasn't hard to do for how bad he played in Game 1. I think last night he was looking for a shot a little bit more early on, but you're right. I think sometimes he could be a little bit more aggressive looking for it and not always get caught in the flow of the offense and trying to feed everybody else. But I just feel like last night it was such a poor performance from everybody that it's really hard to pinpoint, like, okay, he was so bad in this game, he should have done this more, he should have done that more. I mean, everybody was just bad. So overall, I think Tyrese has been good, but not great. And the game winner was special in Game 3. Like, that was just, I'm going to get this bucket, let's go. Like, we want to see more of that Tyrese Haliburton. I think that's what's frustrating for a lot of fans that see what he can do. It's just that he doesn't always do it, and he needs to maybe be a little bit more selfish. And I know that's been kind of something he's dealt with his entire career, is just not being selfish enough. But there's times when, if Aaron Nesmith is going to continue to shoot as poorly as he has from the 3%, and Pascal's not going to be putting up around 35 points a game, where's the scoring going to come from? It can't always come from Miles Turner just being amazing and playing some of his best basketball, setting back-to-back career highs and points. So, I think that's where Tyrese has to step up. And you know what? He's got to be a better scorer and be more selective with what he shoots and when he passes. It's frustrating when you watch Tyrese out there with the bench unit. He drives to the lane, sucks the defense in, then he kicks it out to who? T.J. McConnell has nobody within 30 feet of him. And, I think McConnell's 1 of 10 from 3 this series. So that's not who you want to see Haliburton pass to either. So it's tough. Haliburton, not a selfish guy, but I think that if he could become a little bit more selfish and actually kind of thrive more in the mid-range, that's one thing we haven't seen him do very much in this series. He was doing that a lot when he first came back from the hamstring injury, was really getting out there and shooting that mid-range, about 17, 15-footer. I think that if he could get back to that and add that element to his game, it's going to allow him to be more closer to a 20 to 25-point score per game instead of around 17, 18.
Boy, it was quite the kick in the you-know-what last night. For those that went to bed early, you got the last laugh because there was really nothing to stay up for from that charge there to start the second half and beyond for the Bucks. So tomorrow night, 6:30 from Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Alex, anything you want to plug, man? Setting the pace. You guys have done a great job with consistent pods throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I mean it's been a lot of podcasts coming out at you. So we just had our recent recap of the game on the podcast. If you guys want to check that out, I mean, if you don't, I understand. Not a lot to recap there in terms of fun, but we do preview a little bit for what could come with game 6. There'll be no podcast tomorrow morning because I need to get some sleep. It's just been one of those kind of weeks, KB. So just need some sleep, need some rest, and need to recharge for a few. But always appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk about the Pacers. And, hopefully next time we talk, we'll be talking about a round 2 series.
Alex, thank you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. We'll see you.
That is Alex Golden, Payless Liquors Hotline. It's funny, Andy, when the Knicks were up, gosh, I guess when they were kind of up 6 with 30 seconds to go, or, they had kind of a lead like that throughout much of the final few minutes there last night in regulation, I started to think a ton about Pacers-Knicks. And, if you look at New York right now, I mean, they are last night, Josh Hart played 48 minutes, and this is before overtime. Played every minute of regulation. OG's playing 47. Jalen Brunson's playing, close to that as well. Like, with Bojan Bogdanovic out for the year for them, and Julius Randle, of course, out, I mean, they are a 7-man rotation.
Yeah, the 8th guy they have is Precious Achiuwa, if you remember him at Memphis, but he came over, I believe, in the Raptors trade, did he not, with OG Anunoby? I'm blanking on that, but he's the only guy that might play, and he didn't play at all last night.
Yeah, and it's
none.
Just, again, it's premature to probably even talk about Pacers-Knicks, but to me, that would just be such an awesome series to see. The contrasting styles, offense, defense. You've got the Brunson-Haliburton angle to it. You've got the Siakam and Anunoby angle to it. Madison Square Garden rocking, for my age group and certainly north of my age group, Pacers-Knicks means everything. Boy, there were some moments last night that I caught myself, honestly, probably 12 hours ago, about 9:20 p.m., thinking, wow, this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden, Tyrese Maxey says, watch this. And that series is going back to Philly. And the Bucks said, watch this. And now, Game 6 back at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. So, again, tomorrow night, 6:30, Pacers and Bucks, and 9 o'clock. Boy, you imagine that atmosphere? 9 o'clock tip in Philly?
I mean, that's the thing. They are giving them all of the time to get absolutely drunk before that game.
Now, you say they are giving all of them the time. You mean both fan bases?
I mean both fan bases, yeah.
Because there will be Knicks fans
They're getting ample opportunity. I feel so bad for the security personnel for that game. right? Like you have a better chance to keep things a little bit under control when it's the 6:30, 7 o'clock game, right? But now it's what, the 9? Was it 9 or 9:30? It doesn't matter.
9.
It's all the same. Now you have a 9 o'clock game. Oh, boy.
Yeah,
oh, boy.
Nothing's getting done in Philly on Friday.
Well, I mean, especially, Philly fans are embarrassed that over the weekend the Knicks fans invaded and mocked their stadium, right? They had all the seats. They were in all the luxury suites. They put the jersey on Wilt out front of the stadium and everything else. That's going to be an absolute scene. I happen to think the Knicks actually went on the road.
Knicks fans think they're done.
What do you mean? Knicks fans think, what do you mean that they're done? Like they're going to lose the series?
Yeah.
Do they?
I think so.
Is this the first time they aren't super cocky?
I think the Embiid, Maxey are on the road. Now you come back to Game 7. All the pressure's on you. They've got the best player. Milwaukee, again, they don't have that luxury. I'm trying to compare it to like NFL injury reports, but the fact that Giannis and Lillard haven't even been questionable yet leads me to think, aren't we still like a game away from them being questionable and still being out?
I mean, in no way has Giannis... Okay, so here's my thought on this.
They haven't had a real practice in like a week.
Agreed. If Giannis and or Dame were practicing and were seriously ramping up, we would get a Shams report on that. That is my belief. So, no, that could happen. That could happen today. It could happen tomorrow morning that, hey, Giannis was able to go through a walkthrough and there's some positivity. All the reports on this have been, a lot of them have been from Shams, have been, there is serious doubt, right? I mean, that is how everything has been phrased, so it's not black or white. It's 100% or 0%. There's always been a kind of a qualifier at the beginning. We're not even getting that from Shams or Woj. We're not even getting, there is a growing belief that ... with Giannis or Dame. I'm gonna hold firm that I don't think Giannis is playing in this series. And now we're down to the final, perhaps game or two. I don't think now Dame's an entirely. I don't know what to even think about him. I would say he's an entirely different story. Alex makes a good point. Defensively, Milwaukee is so much better without him. It's just offensively, he can score 40 and knock down 7 threes in a quarter and put you out of a game.
Everything really without him, and I think you saw that last night. I mean, that was pretty universal. Even Beverly. I mean, it's not like Beverly was just always on Haliburton. With a guy like Malik Beasley, and when they go to Connaughton or Andre Jackson Jr. started to play more, they can be very versatile from a defensive standpoint. And that's where I do think, a guy like Siakam, he's the one that gets some of these matchups against smaller guys. I'm not expecting the 35 he had, but Andy, just a little bit more efficient, like 24-point night from him with some of these matchups he's getting, I think would be very well served for the Pacers right now. All right, as we've done all week long, we'll give away a pair of tickets to the Grand Prix on the road course over at IMS. Again, that is a week from Saturday. I want to say it's a 3 o'clock green flag for that one. We had Doug Boles on earlier. You can find that on the podcast here on 1075thefan.com. Before all of that, though, let's do a morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, yeah, unfortunately, we do have to start with what happened in Milwaukee last night. 115-92, that's your final. Pacers still lead the series 3-2, but not a good performance in the second or third quarters, and still a lot of backup players in the fourth quarter, still outscored in the fourth quarter as well. Now, one piece of the entire puzzle here, the Pacers did lead in the first quarter by 8, 31-23, but post-game, Rick Carlisle said first quarter, listen, guys, was still fool's gold.
We were hitting shots, and I think there was maybe a bit of false sense that we were in better shape than what we were. And sometimes, you can get up a few points and feel like you're in good shape, and then they hit us with some waves of runs, and it was tough.
Fool's gold is what I was trying to say there. Again, 115-92, your final. Tyrese Haliburton after the game knows not good enough. The Bucks simply dominated us.
I think we just got to understand that, they're a team that's on the brink of their season being done, and, they're playing desperate, they're playing hard, as they should be. And we, at the end of the day, they outcompeted us tonight. They played harder, played better. They kind of just dominated us in every facet of the game tonight. So we got to be better. Starts with me and that first group, but we just got to be better top to bottom.
Season low, 92 points for the Pacers. They scored 17 in the second, 19 in the third. I knew it was probably time to go to bed when Chris Teneri started to thank the crew in the third quarter.
Whenever he's doing the copyright read, later parts of the third quarter, you know it's over.
Probably get under the covers at this point. Again, ESPN had this stat. The Bucks last night became the first team in NBA history to win a playoff game without its top two scorers. So 6:30 tomorrow night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. 3-2 Pacers lead. As we said last night, the Sixers, they come back and beat the Knicks in Madison Square Garden, so that will be the 9 o'clock game tomorrow night. You did see the Cavs. That was a great finish. I know not a lot of people saw it, but saw the highlights. The Cavs beat the Magic. Big block from Evan Mobley.
Did you see that block, by the way? That was big time.
That was impressive, and that's why you draft Evan Mobley, number 2 overall. So that series is 3-2. So right now in the East, we're still waiting for a clinch. We'll see if Boston can get it done tonight. They're banged up, but they'll be back at home. Obviously, Miami's not going to cry about injuries. 3-1 there in that series. And then out west, 2-2. It's Clippers, it's Mavs. That's back in L.A., correct?
It's back in L.A. Kawhi Leonard out for that game. And it's, he misses so many games anyway, whether it's regular season or postseason. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's career to me is, yes, he's a champion, but just missing games. The Clippers, I don't know. It's funny to say they're not that much worse without Kawhi Leonard. I mean, they have to feel that way, don't they? I know that's crazy to say, but I don't know any other way to take it.
That series, just get me to Game 7. Like, I know they're going to split the next two. Just get me to Game 7. Clippers Mavs, for some reason, has that feel for me. All right, shifting gears baseball-wise. Paul Skeens last night for the Indianapolis Indians, one of the best prospects in all of baseball. 6 innings, 7 strikeouts, 4 hits allowed. Of his 75 pitches, 53 of them were strikes.
Pretty good.
I saw a few of the highlights. First off, 6'6" is imposing enough. The arm angle is imposing enough. He was pitching, Andy, for the majority of the first few innings from the sun, and the batters were in the shadows, and he's throwing 100.
Yeah, forget about it. The AAA players, no offense to them, but just forget about it.
I mean, come on.
What are you going to do? Come on, Pirates. I say call them up. Don't call them up. We'll enjoy him here in Indianapolis.
Yeah,
we'll keep him here. Really last night, no one won last night. The Cardinals, they split their doubleheader. Reds losers last night late, 6-4 to San Diego. The Cubbies finally lost to the Mets 4-2 there. To the Cubs. Just one other thing. The Indiana Fever do have their media day today, so I'm sure you'll see some
preseason
quotes.
opener Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it's right around the corner, so I'm sure you'll see some pictures and quotes and some Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston stuff as you go today. All right, let's take a break on the other side. Let's get to a pop quiz. 239-1070. 317-239-1070. Pop quiz coming up next Wednesday here on The Fan.
Make the hiring process work for you.
Busy show. Pat Narduzzi, the Pittsburgh head coach, talking about Matt Gonzalez, third-round pick of the Colts. We had Stephen Holder. Good combo, Stephen, on a variety of Colts topics. Again, that Quiddy Pay fifth-year deadline tomorrow for the Colts to either pick up that option or not. Doug Boles, always enjoy those conversations. May 1 is here. And then just had Alex Golden coping with Pacers fans here on this Wednesday morning.
By the way, are you okay? I noticed you have a neck wrap. Did you mess your neck up? What happened?
It's been a while since I brought out the heat pack.
I know.
Remember I had that stretch there.
I remember you, the heat pack. That was lower back, about a month and a half ago?
Yeah, and now I'm up. You can kind of see it. I feel like I've got Leatu Latu's neck brace on right here. Yeah, I knew it. I laid on the couch last night, and I knew I was in a position where it would turn out to be like this, and I'm so freaking old, it pisses me off.
See, for me,
I move like if Gallinari and Brooke Lopez had a kid, that's how I'd be moving.
You know when they talk about players,
and Matt Ryan, a three-way kid.
players in their 30s, start to lose it. That's you. I will say, so I'm 30. I'm gonna be 40 in a couple months here.
I haven't seen you have the heat pack before.
I didn't really start to feel it until the last year. Where
is it picking up children? Is that what it is?
Man, I don't know. I had so many problems. Like, I'd mow the lawn, and my back would just be out, right? And that's how I knew I was getting old.
Today, now that you say that.
There you go. It's going to be 80 degrees out. But I'm worried because you're a few years younger than me, and I'm worried that you're starting to get a little bit earlier in your 30s than even I did.
Thanks, Mom.
Well, I'm worried about you. I didn't know what I thought you had some. I didn't know what you had. I thought you had something under your hat there. Let's get a do-rag on. That's what I thought you had on. I'm like, what's Bowen doing over there?
I just put it in the microwave for a minute. Everyone else is warming up their egg and sausage biscuit, and I've got a heat pack.
That's fantastic. All right, 239-1070. Where do we want to go here? We have a full bank of
let's
calls
go with,
here.
The 500? So let's go with caller 5 as we kick off the month of May.
All right, who do we have, Corbin?
We have Casey.
Casey, good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, Casey, great energy here. Casey, you
ready.
there? You scrambling?
I'm ready.
All right. You looking forward to going to the Grand Prix a week from Saturday?
Yes.
All right, well, good deal.
Do you have a favorite driver, Casey?
Scott Dixon.
Ooh, the Iceman. Hard to go wrong there. Does he get a second this year? Does he get a second 500 this year?
Hope so.
Casey's ready to go. He's all business.
Yeah, he doesn't want to talk about Scott Dixon. He wants to get. He wants to win this damn oil change.
Can he be as cool, calm, collected as the Iceman?
All right, question number 1, Casey. 3 teams have advanced to the second round of the NBA playoffs so far. Which of the following teams is still playing in their first round series? Celtics, Nuggets, Timberwolves, Thunder.
Celtics.
Number 2 here, Casey, who is currently leading the NBA playoffs in scoring average. Is it Lillard, Embiid, Maxey, or Brunson?
Brunson.
It's amazing how well he can score for not being just like this crazy, crazy athlete.
Now, listen, he's really good. He also had a terrible play, and I'm surprised. Like, he's such a good player. I was surprised how bad of a play.
When he threw it out of bounds.
Yeah, he had the turnover where he threw the ball out of bounds,
Mm-hmm.
and I even think he was stunned that he made such a bad play there. All right, question number 3. Tyrese Haliburton is currently ranked second in the NBA playoffs with an average of 9.2 assists per game in these playoffs. Who is ahead of Haliburton? Is it LeBron? Is it Jokic, Doncic, or Brunson?
Give me Jokic.
Ooh, all right.
Doing pretty good. I would have went with Luka on that one.
See, you're in good shape here on about lap 170. All right, name the Major League Baseball team that currently has the best record. Orioles, Guardians, Braves, or Brewers?
Guardians.
Question number 5. You want to give another shot there? Okay. Question number 5. 85 years ago today, New York Yankees first baseman Lou Gehrig took himself out of the lineup after playing in a then MLB record 2,130 consecutive games. Now, if you remember, Cal Ripken Jr. broke Gehrig's record by playing in 2,632 games in a row between 1982 and 1998. Since 2000, only one MLB player has had a consecutive game streak of more than 1,000 games? Is it A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, Prince Fielder, Hideki Matsui, Miguel Tejada?
Kahada.
Boy, Casey is concise. He's direct.
He's
and he's
good.
confident.
He's good.
And he is good. I've watched, have you watched that 100 Days to Indy yet? The IndyCar, like, Netflix type series?
Oh, I have not, but I'm going to.
Yeah, I was going to say, you should you should check that out. I watched episode 1 of season 2 the other night.
Was it good?
Very. And I think, like, for someone like you, it gives you a nice little recap on what happened
it'd be perfect.
late last year. Casey, tremendous. Stay on the line no matter what here. Andy, he got the first 3 right.
Boy, he did really good. Yeah, Boston Celtics, they're still playing up 3-1. Jalen Brunson, points per game, averaging 34.4. That's better than anybody. The Joker, 9.8 assists at center. He's leading the playoffs right now, more than even Haliburton with assists, but he tripped up on question number 4, KB.
You blew it! Yeah, that one, to be fair.
That's where he had it.
I guess unless you're checking up on your MLB standings. The Guardians are 19-10, but the Atlanta Braves are 19-9.
He was right there. And question number 5, Miguel Tejada, at one point, June 2000 to June 2007, 1,152 consecutive games.
I had no idea about that. And I love Miguel Tejada's stance, like his batting stance.
Yes, I did. I feel like, boy, this is prisoner of, I guess, the moment or my lifetime. I feel like that record by Cal Ripken Jr. is never going to be broken.
No.
Right?
No chance.
Just because of the load management that you get and everything else. So, congratulations, Casey. Stay on the line. We'll get you hooked up there. All right, we'll take a break. One final time here on the Wake Up Call, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
At Bet365.
Saw this randomly yesterday, Andy. Remember Carson Cunningham, who we had on back during the Purdue national title run? Conzo Martin as well. Really enjoyed both of those conversations with those two guys. Carson Cunningham was at Army as an assistant coach. He is now going to join Conzo Martin's staff at Missouri State.
Oh, I did not see that. Good for him.
So, yeah, I think they had a brief playing overlap there, but probably more on a coaching front there. So, a couple of Purdue guys teaming up there. Again, Conzo Martin back at Missouri State. And I think for Purdue fans that might have missed some of those combos, we have that Purdue tab up on the site. Still a lot of them, especially those two guys, Cunningham and Martin. Not super time sensitive with either of them, and they're just kind of looking back at their time at Purdue. So, nice little boiler flavor there at Missouri State.
Yeah, two college basketball things real quick. One, just to piggyback that. We are going to have to, I'll do this exercise, and I don't know if it needs to be all of D1 because, and Scotty may know, there's well over 300 teams in Division I college basketball, but at least in the Power 5, how many Power 5 teams don't bring in somebody via the portal? Because Purdue, there's a great chance they don't bring in anyone this year. I mean, last year only
Purdue is one of 6 teams. That would be my guess.
I mean, I have no idea. I would probably even say there are less teams than 6, but I have no idea.
Maybe
so,
there is.
We still have some months to do that. When guys take their name out of the draft, there's going to be another round of transfer portal once we get into July and August. So we'll see what happens there. And then I had a buddy send me this. John Calipari going from Lexington to Fayetteville, from UK to Arkansas. His home just went up on the market. I'm looking at the Zillow of the former resident of one John Calipari. $3.99 million if you want to his 5-bedroom, 8-bath. What would you do with 8 bathrooms? Oh my God.
Is Mark Pope moving in there?
I don't think he is.
Baffert moving in there?
I don't think Baffert's around, by the way.
Is he lurking?
I heard Baffert was out at Churchill Downs yesterday.
We need Baffert and Kim Mulkey to team up.
I could maybe see, people here may not care. I might be able to pull some strings, get Baffert on if you want to talk to him.
Hell yeah.
If you want to talk to Bob Baffert, maybe that could happen.
Okay.
I don't know how interesting that is, though, the day after. Friday is the day after Game 6 of the Pacers and Bucks. So they either win, it's the first time in a decade they've won a playoff series, and the jubilation and happiness, or they're going to lose and go Game 7, and everyone's going to be pissed off.
You go back to a little bit of that college basketball talk. By the way, John L. Davis, the Gary product, played at Florida Atlantic for Dusty May. He's going to Arkansas. Saw that announced.
Yeah, that's a big-time one.
With John Calipari.
He got a huge, it's called a substantial NIL package is what he got.
A lot of the FAU guys have followed Dusty May to Michigan, but not him on that front. I did I was a moderator of a panel on Sunday out at the Vogue, and it was a coaches panel. And on the panel was Dane Fife, Mike Pegues, who's an assistant butler for Thad Matta, was a Louisville interim for a brief period there, and then Micah Shrewsbury. And
wait, hang on. We had no idea you did this. You got to bring this stuff to the air. You did a coaching summit with Micah Shrewsbury. We're finding out on a Wednesday.
What am I doing right now?
That's Monday morning at 7:03 conversation. Anyway, go ahead.
I think our audience would rather us talk Colts draft and Pacers Game 4 than me and Micah Shrewsbury. But a question I threw to them was, all right, you're kind of NCAA czar for the day. You can make one rule change to college basketball.
Okay.
One rule change. Where would you go? They all went different directions. Fife went, I want the transfer portal to be you got to sit out 1 year.
Okay, I disagree with Dane Fife, but
now, when I followed up with what about coaches that are able to move freely.
Or assistants or anybody.
Micah Shrewsbury pushed back and said, let's not act like there's a significant financial component that I'm giving up at Penn State to, have to go to Notre Dame on that end. I think that's probably a debate that you'd see more people side with the players on that one than the coaches. Mike Pegues said, can you cap NIL a little bit? Can you create some sort of cap to it? Again, probably easier said than done.
A salary cap. Rick Pitino said, by the way, the same thing. I know a couple coaches
this is Major
believe
League
this.
Baseball. I mean, this
is.
That's exactly. It's not NFL hard cap. And then Shrewsbury, who was the last one to be asked it, and so I don't know if he just wanted to kind of go in a different sort of direction, but he actually likes a lot of what the women's game has done from a rule standpoint. Going to the quarters, going to the 10-minute quarters, resetting fouls, that sort of thing, advancing the ball late in the game.
Well, don't tell our good friend Mike DeCourcy that. He will battle you on Twitter about advancing the basketball.
And again, his thing wasn't necessarily so much about preparing guys for the NBA. He just feels like it would create a little bit more of a flow to it. And, obviously watching Purdue games this year, you saw, Purdue get in the bonus a whole lot early in the game. And, to be fair from an entertainment standpoint, and credit for Purdue for just playing with the rules that they have and obviously the personnel they have, but from an entertainment standpoint, the routine trips to the bonus can get a little old. For the most part in the NBA, you don't have that, or at least it's not as big of a storyline.
Oh, it's a huge deal in college basketball.
Whereas college basketball, it can be much more of that, and you're just resetting fouls and all of that. So I thought that was just some interesting answers from three guys. When you think about it, Fife has obviously coached at a very high major level, but he also has been the head coach at Fort Wayne from a mid-major standpoint. Pegues is at Butler right now, and they've had, I would argue, they've maybe had some of the most portal activity of any team in the last 2 years with Thad Matta. And Micah Shrewsbury is at a position at Notre Dame where, and Shrewsbury is very honest, he goes, we have got to rely on our Notre Dame brand, and by that means I've got to focus on high schoolers more than the portal.
Interesting.
We're not going to be a portal-hungry school. We can't do it academically, and we can't really do it NIL-wise. We're just not as kind of open to that from a financial standpoint, NIL, and academically probably more than anything. There's still, it's not, I don't want to act like it's impossible to get into Notre Dame.
Right.
But it's still.
It's more difficult, obviously.
Than other schools.
Sure.
So I think you kind of got to pick what your brand's going to be, and his thought process is, let's focus on the high school kids. And obviously, his best friend or one of his best friends in the coaching business is Matt Painter. So I think that kind of checks in trying to follow a little bit of that. So I just thought some really interesting answers from those three.
Yeah, I'm asking you, Notre Dame football has pretty good NIL, I would imagine, they're bringing in top classes. And it's not just because people want to play for Touchdown Jesus,
right.
Even though it's a fine program. We have seen money talks. Texas A&M can go out and pay more, and they can get some guys from even Alabama, Georgia, or whatever it may be. That's interesting on the basketball side. I wonder how much he feels like he could kind of raise that, because you're going to...
Have you been to a Notre Dame men's basketball game?
No, not for many, many
years.
You
could sit front row.
I know. I understand that. I think... I kind of at college football recently, they've added this year, a 2-minute warning, and they still have, you just have to have 1 foot in bounds for for a completion and those sorts of things. I feel like college football though, and the NFL, college football has aligned itself with the NFL rules wise much more than college basketball has with the NBA. I always found that interesting. I don't see. College football doesn't mind changing everything. They'll change conferences. They'll change anything. College football does not care. College basketball, I think, will be very resistant. In fact, I don't think there's any conversation too much about going to quarters. And I would like it. I just don't think they're ever
and Fife pushed back saying, and he's more of a traditionalist, but he's like, that would obviously, overhaul any sort of rule book, really, and a lot of the traditions there of college basketball. But the one of the other panels, they also had Mike Babinski, Purdue's AD, Julie Rowe-Lash, who we've had on our show before, commissioner of the Horizon League. She brought up a great point. In the last 6 months, college athletics has had 3 generational things happen to it.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, they just had one in the last 24 hours, too.
NIL, portal, and gambling. Those 3 items, if they were isolated to one, whatever, Miles Brand's run as president, or whoever, is running the NCAA, that would be like monumental news for that cycle or that era of a president. And really, the NCAA has had to handle, and college athletics probably more than anything, has had to handle 3 of that in the last, again, kind of 6 to 12 months that it's really, really picked up. So it's just a reminder of how crazy of a time it is from a college athletics standpoint.
One thing we didn't talk too much about, Pete Thamel, this was yesterday or the day before. We're talking Tuesday. I think this was on Tuesday. Pete Thamel of ESPN reported that instead of the billions of dollars in lawsuits and lawyer fees and everything else, that college sports leaders in the last couple weeks have basically bent the knee and realized that they're going to have to share revenue with the college athletes. I mean, that is a fun.
Which is a big step.
Well, it's a huge step. It's been what's been fought over now for a number of years, and so exactly what that looks like. And this goes to. I understand the salary cap on the NIL. I understand that it's not like the NFL, that it's much more like Major League Baseball. I'm not asking you to like it or dislike it. My only frustration is, again, the NCAA had a chance to get in front of all of this, and they didn't, right? And so it's very difficult to pull the reins back, I would imagine, much more so of having rules and regulations on the front end, right? I mean, now you've created this system of true open market free agency, and it's going to be very difficult to stop that because it's good for many programs, right? I mean, it's good locally here for Indiana basketball.
Bought, not built.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana basketball doesn't want to see you put a salary cap on NIL stuff. They'd be the last. I mean, Mike Woodson has created hype around his program for 2 straight off seasons by being able to go out and being able to pay 4 or 5 guys that makes you feel better about his team.
Without question. Celtics and Heat tonight, and then Clippers and Mavs. Obviously, a lot for us tomorrow previewing. I want to get back into some Colts talk, a little bit more extended Colts talk if we can tomorrow. But we'll also be previewing a little bit of Game 6.
Yeah,
6:30 tomorrow.
My early thing tomorrow is going to be, and I hate saying this, and I know it's still a 3 seed and everything else, but there's going to be a sense of kind of embarrassment if the Pacers were to lose here,
without question,
without Dame and without Giannis. So we'll do all of that. Reminder: Query and Company coming your way at noon. JMV coming your way at 3:00. We're back at it tomorrow at 7 a.m. Have a good afternoon.
This is May. It's Indy and May meet.